After the family dinner, I forgot my phone on the table. When I came back, the waitress locked the door behind me and whispered, "I will show you the camera footage from above your table, but promise me you won't pass out." What I saw on that grainy video made my knees buckle, but I didn't fall. Instead, I felt a fire ignite in my chest that burned hotter than the betrayal itself. Before I tell you what I saw and how I made them pay for every single drop, please hit that like button and subscribe. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from. My name is Otis King, and for 40 years, I worked as a structural engineer in Atlanta. I know how things are built. I know that if the foundation is rotten, it does not matter how pretty the paint is on the walls, the whole thing will eventually collapse. I just never thought the structure that would crumble around me would be my own family. It was a Tuesday evening, the 6-month anniversary of the day my wife Viola passed away. My son Darius and his wife Tiffany had insisted on taking me out to dinner. They chose a place called the Obsidian, a restaurant with dim lighting, velvet chairs, and menus that did not list prices. It was the kind of place Viola would have hated. She preferred her kitchen table where the food was hot and the conversation was honest. But I went because Darius asked me to. I went because since Viola died, the silence in my house had become loud enough to deafen a man. Tiffany was wearing a red dress that was too tight and smiling a smile that did not reach her eyes. She sat across from me, tapping her manicured fingernails on the wine glass. Darius sat next to her, looking like a man waiting for a sentencing hearing. He kept adjusting his tie, avoiding my gaze, staring at the candle in the center of the table. So Dad, Tiffany started before the appetizers even arrived. "We were thinking about what you said last week. About the house." I had said nothing about the house. I took a sip of water and looked at her. My house was a 4-bedroom brick colonial I built with my own hands in 1980, back when banks did not like lending money to men who looked like me for neighborhoods that looked like that. I poured the concrete for the driveway myself. I reinforced the load-bearing walls with steel beams that could withstand a hurricane. That house was not just wood and brick. It was my history. I am fine where I am. "Tiffany," I said, my voice calm. "But it is so much space for just one person," she pressed, leaning forward. Her perfume was cloying, sweet and heavy. "Darius and I visited the Pines yesterday. It is that luxury assisted living facility on the north side. It is beautiful, Otis. They have a golf course, a heated pool, and 24-hour staff. You would not have to worry about maintenance or stairs or being alone." I looked at Darius. He was cutting his steak with unnecessary force. "Son," I said, "do you think I need 24-hour staff?" Darius looked up for a second, then looked back down at his plate. "It is not about needing it, Dad. It is about safety. You are 72. If you fell, nobody would know." "I have not fallen in 40 years, I said. "My balance is fine. My mind is sharp. I still consult on bridge projects. I do not need a nurse to wipe my chin." Tiffany let out a short, sharp laugh. "Oh, Otis, do not be so dramatic. We just want you to be comfortable. Plus, maintaining that big old house eats up so much of your pension. If you sold it, you could afford the best suite at the Pines and still have plenty left over to help family." There it was. The crack in the foundation. To help family. Meaning to help Tiffany buy a new car, or help Darius invest in another business idea that would fail within 6 months. "I am not selling the house," I said. My voice was low, but it carried the weight of finality. "It stays in the family. It goes to Darius when I am gone, not before." "Not?" Tiffany's jaw tightened. She looked at Darius, waiting for him to back her up. But my son, who I raised to stand tall, remained silent, chewing his steak like it was cardboard. The rest of the dinner was tense. The air was thick with unsaid words. When dessert came, I declined, but Tiffany insisted I have coffee. "You look tired, Dad," she said, her voice suddenly dripping with that fake sweetness again. "Have a special blend. It will perk you up for the ride home." She ordered it for me. She spoke to the waiter in a hushed tone, pointing at something on the menu. When the coffee arrived, it smelled rich and dark. I took a sip. It was bitter, more bitter than usual, but I drank it to be polite. I wanted this night to end. I wanted to go home to my empty house where the only ghost was the memory of a woman who actually loved me. About 10 minutes after finishing the coffee, the room tilted. It was subtle at first. The edges of my vision blurred. The chatter of the restaurant sounded like it was coming from underwater. I gripped the edge of the table. My hands felt heavy. My fingers felt like sausages. "Are you okay, Dad?" Darius asked. He sounded far away. "I am just tired," I mumbled. The words felt thick in my mouth. I need to go home. See, Tiffany said, her voice sharp and triumphant. I told you he is declining, Darius. Look at him. He is confused. He probably does not even know where he is. I knew exactly where I was. I was in a nest of vipers. I pushed my chair back. The legs scraped loudly against the floor. I stood up, but my knees wobbled. I had to lean against the table to stay upright. Let's get him to the car, Darius said, standing up to grab my arm. I pulled away. I can walk, I snapped, though I was not sure if I could. I walked toward the exit, focusing on the doorframe, treating it like a structural reference point, one foot in front of the other. Do not let them see you stumble, Otis. Do not give them the satisfaction. We made it to the valet stand. The fresh air hit my face, but it did not clear the fog in my brain. It felt like cotton wool was being stuffed into my skull. Darius helped me into the back seat of his car. I leaned my head against the cool window and closed my eyes. Wait. My phone. I patted my jacket pocket. Empty. I patted my pants. Nothing. I had left it on the table. My phone had everything in it. Photos of Viola, my contacts, my digital banking apps. Stop the car, I mumbled. Dad, we are already pulling out, Darius said. My phone, I said louder, summoning every ounce of strength I had left. I left my phone. Go back. Tiffany sighed from the passenger seat. Honestly, Darius, he is losing it. We will get it tomorrow. Turn the car around, I roared. It came out slurred, but the command was there. Darius flinched and hit the brakes. He turned the car around without a word. I will get it, Tiffany said, unbuckling her seatbelt. No, I said. I will get it. I opened the door before the car fully stopped. I needed to move. I needed to prove to myself that my legs still worked. I stumbled toward the restaurant entrance. The restaurant was closing. The lights were dimmed. The host stand was empty. I pushed through the heavy oak doors. The dining room was mostly empty now, just a few busboys clearing tables. I walked toward our table near the back. My phone was there, sitting on the white tablecloth. I reached for it, but before my fingers could touch the screen, a hand grabbed my wrist. I looked up. It was the waitress who had served us. Her name tag said Maya. She was young, maybe 22, with tired eyes and a messy bun. She looked terrified. Mr. King, she whispered. Yes, I said, trying to pull my hand away, but her grip was surprisingly strong. Come with me, she said. I need my phone, I said. I have it, she said, picking it up with her other hand. But you need to see something first. Please. It is important. She did not wait for an answer. She pulled me toward the kitchen service door. The fog in my head was getting thicker. My legs felt like lead. I stumbled after her. We went into a small supply closet filled with napkins and cleaning supplies. Maya shut the door and turned the lock. The click echoed in the small space. What is going on? I asked, leaning against a shelf of tablecloths to keep from sliding to the floor. Maya pulled a tablet out of her apron. Her hands were shaking. I saw them tonight, she said. I saw how they treated you. And then I saw this. She tapped the screen. It was a video feed. Security footage, black and white, high angle. It showed our table from about 20 minutes ago. I saw myself on the screen standing up to go to the restroom. Watch, Maya whispered. Promise you one won't pass out. I watched. On the screen, the moment I left the frame, Tiffany reached into her purse. She pulled out a small, clear vial. She looked around quickly. Darius was looking right at her. She uncorked the vial and poured the liquid into my coffee cup. I stopped breathing. Then she stirred it with her spoon and licked the spoon clean. She said something to Darius. Maya tapped the audio button. The sound was tinny, but clear. This will knock him out for at least 12 hours, Tiffany's voice hissed from the tablet. By the time he wakes up, we will have him at the lawyer's office. He will be so groggy he will sign the power of attorney thinking it is the insurance renewal. And Darius, my son, the boy I taught to ride a bike, the man I paid tuition for, what did he do? On the screen, Darius watched her pour the poison. He looked at the cup. Then he looked at Tiffany. Are you sure this is safe? He asked. It is just a sedative, you coward, Tiffany snapped. Do you want the money or not? Because if we do not sell that house this month, the loan sharks are going to break your legs, not mine. Darius looked at the cup again. Then he picked up the sugar bowl and added 2 packets to my coffee. To hide the taste, he muttered. The video ended. I stood there in the supply closet and the world stopped spinning. The dizziness was still there, but it was no longer confusion. It was rage, pure, cold, structural rage, the kind of anger that straightens your spine and clears your vision. They drugged me. My son helped her cover the taste. Mr. King Maya said, her voice trembling. You cannot go back out there with them. That coffee had enough benzodiazepine to drop a horse. I am a nursing student. I know what that reaction looks like. You need a hospital. I looked at this young woman, a stranger. She had risked her job, maybe her safety, to show me this. Why did you show me this? I asked. Because my grandfather raised me, she said. And if someone did that to him, I would burn the world down. I nodded. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my wallet. My hands were shaking, but not from the drug. I pulled out all the cash I had, $300. Take this, I said. Keep that video, send it to my phone, and do not delete it from the system. I cannot take your money, she said. Take it, I commanded. You just saved my life. Now unlock the door. You are not going back with them, are you? She asked, eyes wide. I have to, I said. If I run now, they will know I know. They will panic. They will try something else. I need to buy time. But the drug, she said. I will fight it, I said. I have built skyscrapers in a hurricane. I can handle a nap. I unlocked the door and stepped back out into the dining room. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a sledgehammer. I walked to the front door. I put on the mask I had worn for 40 years in corporate boardrooms where men did not want to listen to me. The mask of the calm, oblivious man. I walked out to the car. Darius was pacing by the driver's side. Tiffany was scrolling on her phone. Got it, I said, holding up the phone. Great, Tiffany said, not looking up. Let's go home. You look exhausted, Otis. I got into the back seat. As we drove away, I looked at the back of my son's head. I looked at the woman sitting next to him. And I made a promise to Viola right then and there. They wanted the house. They wanted the money. They wanted me out of the way. They were going to wish they had just put me in the ground because what I was about to do to them was going to be so much worse. I closed my eyes and let the drug pull me under, but I kept one thought anchored in my mind like a steel pile. Tomorrow the demolition begins. Here is part 2 of the story, written based on your outline and requirements. The car ride back to Darius's house was a blur of nausea and streetlights streaking past the window like comets. The benzodiazepine Tiffany had poured into my coffee was heavy, a lead blanket trying to smother my brain. I fought it with every structural fiber of my being. I dug my fingernails into my palms until the skin broke, using the sharp sting of pain to keep the darkness at bay. "We are here, Dad," Darius said as he pulled into the driveway. His voice was tight, thin, the voice of a man walking a tightrope over hell. They helped me out of the car. I let my legs buckle, leaning my full weight onto my son. I needed them to believe I was fading. I needed them to drop their guard. "I need bathroom," I slurred, letting my head loll onto Darius's shoulder. "Of course, Otis," Tiffany cooed. Her grip on my arm was iron hard, her nails digging into my bicep. "Let's get you inside. You poor thing, you are just exhausted." They practically dragged me into the guest bedroom on the ground floor. It was a cold, sterile room decorated in shades of gray and white, like a showroom where no one actually lived. They had moved me here 3 days ago, claiming the pipes in my house had burst and the floors were flooded. A lie. I knew that now. The moment they closed the door, the act dropped. I stumbled into the ensuite bathroom, locked the door, and fell to my knees in front of the toilet. I didn't hesitate. I shoved 2 fingers down my throat. I gagged, my stomach contracting violently. I forced myself again, harder, deeper. The survival instinct overrode the sedative's command to sleep. I retched, heaving the black coffee and the bile into the water. Again and again, until my throat felt raw and my eyes streamed with tears. I flushed the toilet to cover the sound of my gasping breath. I slumped against the cold tile wall, wiping my mouth. The world was still spinning, a carousel of shadows, but the heavy, suffocating fog had lifted just an inch. I wasn't clear, but I was present. I splashed ice-cold water on my face, staring at the man in the mirror. Gray skin, bloodshot eyes. I looked weak. Good. That was my camouflage. I shuffled back into the bedroom, kicked off my shoes, and collapsed onto the bed. I didn't get under the covers. I just lay there staring at the crack of light beneath the door, regulating my breathing. This feeling, this sense of being watched, of being underestimated, it pulled a memory from the deep foundations of my mind. 1978. I was 26 years old, the newly appointed chief structural engineer for the Midtown Viaduct project. I walked into the first board meeting, a room full of white men in gray suits. They smiled at me, they shook my hand, they offered me coffee, but their eyes didn't smile. Their eyes were cold, assessing, waiting for me to crack. "He's an affirmative action hire," I had heard one whisper in the hallway. "Give him a month, he'll buckle under the load." I didn't buckle. I reinforced my spine with steel. I worked twice as hard, checked my calculations 3 times, and built a bridge that is still standing 40 years later. I learned back then that a smile is often just a baring of teeth. I learned that the most dangerous enemies aren't the ones shouting slurs on the street. They are the ones pouring you coffee and asking about your family while they wait for you to fail. Tiffany was just another suit in a boardroom, and I had outlasted them all. I lay still for 10 minutes, forcing my breathing into a rhythmic, heavy snore. I needed them to think the drug had won. Soft footsteps approached the door. The shadow under the frame broke. "Is he out?" Darius whispered. "He has to be," Tiffany replied. Her voice was stripped of its fake sweetness. It was sharp metallic. That dose would knock out a linebacker. "I don't like this, Tiff," Darius said. He looked right at me in the car, like he knew. "He looked at you because he was high as a kite, Darius. Stop being so pathetic. We are past the point of no return." There was a pause. I imagined Darius wringing his hands, a habit he'd had since he was a boy, lying about broken windows. "Go check the kitchen window," Tiffany commanded. "Make sure the blinds are down. I need to make a call." I heard Darius's heavy footsteps retreat down the hall. Tiffany stayed by the door. I knew I had to risk it. The drug made my movements clumsy, but I rolled off the bed. I crawled across the floor, ignoring the burn of the carpet on my knees. I pressed my ear to the gap between the door and the frame. I heard the beep of a call connecting. "It is done," Tiffany said. Her voice was low, intimate. "Step 1 is complete. We just got back. He is out cold." She paused, listening to someone on the other end. "No, Evans, don't worry." She laughed, a cruel, sharp sound. "He won't remember a thing. The benzos cause short-term amnesia. He will wake up tomorrow morning foggy, confused, and irritable. Perfect for the evaluation." Evans. The name triggered a warning light in my brain. Was it the doctor from the nursing home she mentioned, or someone else? I filed the name away in the steel trap of my mind. "Yes, I have the script," she continued. "Darius will drive him to your office at 8 sharp. We will tell him it is for the insurance renewal like we planned. You just need to ask him the questions fast, confuse him. He will fail. I guarantee it. By noon, we will have the competency declaration signed." She was silent for a moment, then her voice dropped, dripping with something that sounded like lust or greed. "And then the house is ours. Or yours, I guess, once we transfer the title. Just make sure the payment clears to my offshore account, honey. Darius thinks we are just selling it to a stranger." My blood ran cold. She wasn't just stealing the house for them. She was selling me out, selling Darius out, playing a double game. She was stealing my home to pay off, who Evans. And she was cutting my son out of the real profit. "I have to go," she whispered. "The idiot is coming back. See you tomorrow." The call ended. I scrambled back to the bed, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I threw myself onto the mattress and resumed my fake snoring just as the doorknob turned. The door opened a crack. A sliver of light cut across the room, hitting my face. I didn't twitch. I kept my mouth open, letting a line of drool escape onto the pillow. "He is dead to the world," Tiffany whispered. "Good," Darius said from behind her. "Let's go to bed. I feel sick." "You feel sick because you are weak," she hissed. "Go upstairs. I will be up in a minute." The door closed. I waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes. The house settled into the quiet creaks of the night. I needed water. My throat was raw. I needed to wash my face properly and formulate a plan. I sat up, fighting the wave of dizziness that washed over me. I stood up, swaying like a skyscraper in a gale, and walked quietly to the door. I reached for the handle. It didn't turn. I frowned. I tried again, twisting it harder. It was stuck. Nope, not stuck. Locked. I knelt down and looked at the keyhole. It was a simple privacy lock, usually openable from the inside. But this one had been modified. I could see the fresh scratches on the metal plate. Someone had reversed the mechanism or installed a deadbolt on the other side while I was at the restaurant. I was not a guest. I was a prisoner. I backed away from the door, my breathing coming fast and shallow. Panic tried to seize me, tried to tell me to pound on the door and scream, but I pushed it down. Panic is a structural flaw. Panic causes collapse. I went to the window. It was a large, modern pane of glass. I unlatched it and tried to slide it up. It moved an inch and then hit something hard. I looked closely at the track. Screws. 3 long black drywall screws had been driven into the frame above the sash, preventing the window from opening more than a crack. Fresh sawdust dusted the sill. This wasn't a spontaneous decision. They hadn't just drugged me on a whim tonight. This room had been prepared. The lock, the window. They had turned this guest room into a holding cell days ago. I stumbled back to the bed and sat down. The reality of my situation settled onto my shoulders like a concrete slab. I was trapped in a room with no exit. I had a head full of poison. My son was a coward and his wife was a snake who was planning to have me declared legally incompetent in less than 12 hours. I looked at my watch. It was 11 p.m. The appointment with the mysterious Dr. Evans was at 8 a.m. I had 9 hours. 9 hours to clear my head. 9 hours to escape a locked room. 9 hours to save my life and my legacy. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the only tool I had managed to swipe from the dinner table when I went back for my phone. A sturdy stainless steel soup spoon. I gripped the handle. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Step 1 complete, I whispered into the darkness, mocking her words. Step 2, I said, looking at the door hinges painted over with thick white gloss. Demolition. The red digital numbers on the bedside clock read 4:12 in the morning. I had less than 3 hours before Darius would come through that door to drive me to my execution. My head was still throbbing a dull, rhythmic ache that sat behind my eyes like a trapped bird, but the nausea had subsided enough for me to focus. I sat on the floor with my back against the wall, staring at the bottom hinge of the bedroom door. I took the stainless steel soup spoon from my pocket. It was a heavy piece of cutlery, one I had slipped into my sleeve while Tiffany was distracted paying the bill. For the last hour, I had been grinding the edge of the handle against the rough, exposed brick of the decorative fireplace in the corner of the room. It was slow work. The screeching sound of metal on stone had to be masked by the hum of the central air conditioning, but I had managed to create a flat, thin edge. It was not a screwdriver, but for a man who had built bridges with less, it would have to do. I crawled over to the door. My knees protested the stiff joints of a 72-year-old man, amplifying the ache, but I pushed the pain into a small box in the back of my mind. I positioned the spoon's edge under the head of the bottom hinge pin. The paint was thick layers of white latex meant to seal the mechanism forever. Tiffany had been thorough, but paint is not steel. I applied pressure. The spoon handle dug into my palm. I leaned my weight into it, using the door frame as a fulcrum. Physics does not care about age or betrayal. Physics only cares about force and leverage. The paint cracked with a tiny sound like a snapping twig. I held my breath, waiting for footsteps upstairs. Silence. I pushed harder. The pin moved. Just a millimeter. I worked the spoon around the head, chipping away the dried paint until the metal was exposed. I pushed again. The pin slid up an inch. I pulled it out with my fingers, my hands trembling slightly, not from fear but from the residue of the poison in my blood. 1 down, 2 to go. The middle hinge was easier. The top hinge was the problem. I had to stand up to reach it, and standing made the room spin. I braced my shoulder against the door jamb. I could hear my own heartbeat thumping in my ears. I worked the spoon into the gap. It slipped and gouged my thumb. I watched a bead of dark blood well up, but I did not stop. I wiped it on my pants and tried again. Pop! The top pin came loose. Now came the dangerous part. With the pins out, the door was just a heavy slab of wood held in place by friction and the lock bolt. If I let it fall, it would crash onto the floor and wake the whole house. I gripped the doorknob with my left hand and the edge of the door with my right. I pulled it toward me, gently lifting it at the same time to clear the carpet. It was heavy, solid wood. Darius had spared no expense on the fixtures, even if he scrimped on his morals. The door slid out of the frame with a low groan. I lowered it inch by inch until it rested softly against the bedroom wall. The hallway stretched out before me, dark and empty. I stepped out. My socks made no sound on the hardwood. I needed to get to the back door. The front door would have the security alarm keypad, and I did not know the code. The back door in the kitchen usually had a manual deadbolt. I took 2 steps toward the kitchen when I heard it. A floorboard creaked above my head. Then the sound of a toilet flushing. Then heavy footsteps coming down the stairs. Darius. He was awake. I looked around frantically. The living room was too open. The kitchen was where he was heading. To my left was a small coat closet under the stairs. I didn't think. I moved. I slipped inside the closet and pulled the door shut, leaving just a hairline crack. I pressed myself back among the winter coats, smelling of cedar and mothballs, trying to quiet the whistle of my breathing. Darius walked past the closet. He was wearing his pajamas, his hair matted from sleep. He walked into the kitchen. I heard the refrigerator open, then the clink of a glass. He was getting water. He didn't go back upstairs. Instead, he leaned against the kitchen island just 10 feet from where I was hiding. I could see his profile in the slice of light coming from the open fridge. He looked haggard. He rubbed his face with both hands and let out a long, shuddering sigh. "I cannot do this," he whispered to the empty room. I held my breath. Was this it? Was this my son's conscience finally waking up? He took a gulp of water and slammed the glass down on the counter. "It is too much, Tiff," he muttered to himself. "He is my dad. If he finds out, if the courts find out." He paused, staring at the floor. "But she will leave me," he whispered, his voice cracking. "She will take everything. She will tell everyone about the gambling debts. I have no choice. I just have to get through today. Just get him to sign the papers. Then it is over. He will be safe in the home. He won't know the difference." I closed my eyes in the dark. A single tear, hot and angry, rolled down my cheek. I had hoped to hear malice. I had hoped to hear a villain. But this was worse. I was listening to a weak man bargaining with his own soul. He wasn't doing this because he hated me. He was doing it because he was terrified of his wife and too cowardly to face his own mistakes. He was willing to erase my life to save his own comfort. That hurt more than the poison. Darius rinsed his glass and walked back toward the stairs. I waited until I heard his bedroom door click shut on the second floor. I pushed the closet door open. The house was silent again, but the air felt different now. It felt toxic. I crept into the kitchen. The back door was there, its glass pane reflecting the moonlight. I reached for the deadbolt. It was a double-cylinder lock. It needed a key from the inside. Create a problem, solve a problem. That is what engineers do. I looked around. I couldn't break the glass, the noise would be too loud. I scanned the room, the window over the sink. It was a crank window. I climbed onto the counter, my joints screaming in protest. I turned the crank. It was stiff, but it moved. The window opened outward, leaving a space just big enough for a man. I pushed the screen out. It popped onto the grass outside with a soft thud. I put one leg out, then the other. I hung from the sill for a second, feeling the cool morning air on my skin. Then I dropped. I landed in the mulch of the flower bed. I rolled to absorb the impact, but a sharp pain shot through my ankle. I bit my tongue to keep from crying out. I lay there in the dirt for a moment, staring up at the dark window of the bedroom where my son slept. "Goodbye, Darius," I whispered. I limped to the street. I didn't dare call a rideshare to the house. I walked 2 blocks to the main avenue, staying in the shadows of the trees. My head was clearing with every step, the adrenaline burning off the last of the fog. I flagged down an early morning taxi. The driver, a large man with a thick beard, looked at me suspiciously. I was wearing wrinkled clothes covered in mulch, and I looked like I had been through a war. "Where to?" he asked. "The Midtown Private Clinic," I said. "Do not take the highway. Take the back roads. You got money, old-timer." I pulled out a $100 bill from my wallet, one of the few I had stashed. "Just drive." 20 minutes later, I walked into the emergency room of the clinic. It wasn't the main hospital. This was a private facility run by Dr. Raymond Vance, an old friend from my Rotary Club days. A man who owed me a favor for checking the structural integrity of his beach house after a storm last year. The receptionist tried to stop me asking for insurance cards and IDs. "Tell Raymond that Otis King is here," I said, leaning heavily on the counter. "Tell him I have been poisoned." 5 minutes later, Raymond was rushing down the hallway in his white coat, his eyes wide with concern. He took one look at me and ordered a wheelchair. "Get him to room 3, he barked at a nurse. "Full toxicology screen. Stat. And get the police on the line if he says so." "No police yet," I said, grabbing Raymond's arm. "Just the test. I need proof, Raymond. I need it on paper." They drew my blood. I sat on the sterile paper of the exam table, watching the clock on the wall. 6:30 a.m. Darius would be waking up. He would be going downstairs to unlock the guest room door. He would find the empty bed, the hinges on the floor, and the open window. Panic would be setting in right about now. Raymond came back in 40 minutes later. He held a clipboard, his face grim. "You were right, Otis," he said. "What is it?" I asked. "High levels of benzodiazepines, specifically lorazepam, and something else, a synthetic sedative usually used for pre-surgery anesthesia." I nodded. The combination, the cocktail designed to confuse and subdue. How much, I asked. "Enough to put a man half your age in a coma," Raymond said. "In someone your age, it would cause extreme confusion, memory loss, motor control failure." "Does it look like dementia?" I asked. Raymond looked at me over his glasses. "To an untrained eye, yes. Slurring, stumbling confusion. If you walked into a competency hearing like that, you would fail before you even sat down." I closed my eyes and let out a long breath. The proof was in my veins. They hadn't just tried to trick me. They had tried to chemically lobotomize me to make their lie the truth. "Can you flush it out?" I asked. "I can give you fluids," Raymond said. "It will take a few hours to clear your system completely. But Otis, you cannot go back there. This is assault. This is attempted murder." I opened my eyes. I looked at the man who had been my friend for 20 years. "I am not going back there, Raymond. I am going to war. But first, I need you to print that report. Make 3 copies. Notarize them." "What are you going to do?" Raymond asked. I stood up. My legs were steady now. The dizziness was gone, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. "I am going to check on my house," I said. "Tiffany said the pipes burst. I have a feeling that was a lie too, and if they touched a single brick of the home I built for Viola, God help them." I took the report. It was heavy in my hand, heavier than a hammer, heavier than a steel beam. It was the first nail in their coffin. I walked out of the clinic and into the morning sun. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Darius, calling me. I let it ring, let him sweat, let him wonder. I hailed another taxi. "Take me to Highland Avenue," I told the driver. As the car pulled away, I looked at the date on my watch. Today was the day I was supposed to sign my life away. Instead, today was the day I took it back. I sat in the back of the taxi, watching the city wake up through the window. The toxicology report was folded in my jacket pocket, resting against my chest like a steel plate. It was armor. But armor only protects you from new wounds. It does not heal the ones you already have. I pulled out the business card Tiffany had given me 3 days ago. Rapid Flow Plumbing. She had handed it to me with shaking hands, claiming they were the only ones available to fix the catastrophic burst pipe that had supposedly flooded my ground floor. I dialed the number. My thumb hovered over the end call button, ready to snap it shut the moment I heard a voice. But there was no voice, just 3 sharp tones followed by a robotic recording. "The number you have dialed is not in service. Please check the number and try again." I hung up. There was no plumber. There never was. The only leak was the truth seeping out of the cracks in their lies. "Driver, step on it," I said. The taxi turned onto Highland Avenue. This was my street. I knew every pothole, every cracked sidewalk slab, every oak tree. I had watched them grow from saplings. As we approached number 420, I braced myself for the sight of work trucks, industrial dehumidifiers, maybe a dumpster filled with water-damaged drywall. I saw none of that. The street in front of my house was empty. The driveway was clean. The morning sun hit the red brick facade that I had laid with my own hands 40 years ago. It looked peaceful. It looked normal, except for one thing. Stuck right in the middle of my manicured zoysia grass was a white wooden post. Hanging from it was a sign swinging gently in the breeze. Century Elite Realty. Underneath, in bold red letters, a sticker had been slapped across the main text. Pending sale. I felt the air leave my lungs as if I had been punched in the solar plexus. Pending sale, not for sale, pending. That meant the deal was done. That meant papers had been signed. That meant someone somewhere thought they owned my life. "Stop here," I told the driver. I paid him and got out. My legs felt heavy, not from the drugs this time, but from the sheer gravitational pull of the betrayal. I walked up the driveway. I didn't go to the front door. I went to the porch steps, 3rd step from the bottom. To the naked eye, the mortar looked solid. But I knew better. I had mixed it myself in 1980, intentionally adding a bit more sand to the mix for this one specific joint. I took my house key and wedged it into the crack, wiggling the brick loose. Behind it, in a small hollow space wrapped in oilcloth, was my emergency key. I had put it there the day we moved in just in case I ever locked myself out. I never thought I would need it to break into my own home because my son had changed the locks. I slid the key into the front door. It turned with a smooth, heavy click. The deadbolt slid back. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The smell hit me first. It wasn't the smell of damp wood or mold or standing water. It was the smell of lemon pledge and fresh paint. The smell of erasure. The house was empty. Not just tidy. Empty. Viola's upright piano, which had stood in the foyer for 30 years, was gone. The indentations in the carpet were the only proof it had ever been there. The hallway table where we kept the mail gone. The family photos that lined the staircase, the timeline of our lives from our wedding to Darius's graduation gone. I walked into the living room. My footsteps echoed on the hardwood floors. The furniture was gone. My leather armchair where I read the Sunday paper, gone. The rug Viola had brought back from Morocco, gone. They hadn't just staged the house. They had looted it. I walked to the fireplace. The mantel was bare. Viola's urn. It was supposed to be there, right in the center. A ceramic vase painted with blue irises, her favorite flower. It was gone. A sound escaped my throat, a low animal growl that I couldn't suppress. They had taken her. They had taken my wife. I ran to the kitchen. Empty. The cabinets were open and bare. I ran to the dining room. Empty. I stood in the center of the living room, spinning slowly, trying to process the scale of the violation. This wasn't just theft. This was an eviction of my soul. I closed my eyes, and for a second I was back in 1980. I was standing on this same plot of land, but there was no house then. Just dirt and weeds and a sign that said sold. The real estate agent, a man with a thin mustache and nervous eyes, had tried to talk me out of it. "Mr. King, you have to understand," he had said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "The neighbors here, they are particular. They have covenants. Maybe you would be more comfortable in the South District." I knew what particular meant. It meant white. It meant they didn't want a black engineer living next door, no matter how many bridges he designed. "I am buying this lot," I had told him, slamming the check onto his desk. "And I am building a house that will stand longer than their prejudice. I built it on weekends and nights. I poured the foundation deeper than code required. I reinforced the framing with steel brackets I fabricated myself." When the bank stalled on the construction loan, I worked double shifts to pay for materials in cash. Viola was there every step of the way, sanding drywall, planting the azalea bushes out front, making sure this place was a fortress of love. We beat them. We outlasted the glares, we outlasted the whispers, we became the pillars of this street, and now my son, the boy who grew up safe behind these brick walls, had sold it out from under me like it was a used car. I walked over to the wall where the thermostat used to be. It had been replaced by a smart home panel blinking a blue light. They had upgraded the tech to boost the asking price. Then I heard it. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway, car doors slamming, voices, cheerful professional voices. "The natural light in the foyer is truly stunning," a woman's voice said, "and the flow into the living area is perfect for entertaining." I stiffened. I recognized that voice. I stepped back into the shadows of the hallway just as the front door opened. A woman walked in. She was wearing a beige blazer and a skirt that was too short for business. Her hair was dyed a platinum blonde that clashed with her skin tone. She was holding a tablet and smiling at a young couple following her. It was Kylie, Tiffany's cousin. I knew her. She was a failed actress turned real estate agent who had been fired from 2 brokerages for unethical practices. Tiffany had brought her to Thanksgiving dinner 2 years ago. She had spent the whole meal complaining about the wine and asking how much my house was worth. "Please come in," Kylie chirped, gesturing grandly to the empty room. "As you can see, the sellers have already vacated, so we can offer immediate occupancy. The staging was removed yesterday to get the floors buffed." The couple looked around, eyes wide. "It is huge," the husband said, "and the brickwork is incredible." "Custom built," Kylie said, tapping her tablet. "One owner, structural engineer. This place is a fortress. We have multiple offers on the table, but the sellers are motivated to close quickly. Cash is king. Why are they moving?" the wife asked. Kylie lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Sad story, actually. The owner passed away recently. No heirs except a son who lives out of state. He just wants to liquidate the estate and move on. Passed away. She told them I was dead. I stepped out of the shadows. My boots hit the floor with a heavy thud. Rumors of my death," I said, my voice booming off the bare walls, "have been greatly exaggerated. Kylie spun around. She dropped her tablet. It hit the floor with a crack that sounded like a gunshot. Her face went from professional brightness to sheer terror in a split second. She looked like she was seeing a ghost. Mr. King, she stammered, backing up until she hit the wall. The young couple looked from me to her, confused. "Who is this?" the husband asked. "I am the owner," I said, walking toward them. I didn't look at the couple. I kept my eyes locked on Kylie, the one who supposedly passed away, the one who built this floor you are standing on. Kylie. "What is going on?" the wife asked, edging toward the door. "You said the owner was dead. He is..." Kylie couldn't speak. She was hyperventilating. Her eyes darted to the door, then back to me. "Get out," I said to the couple. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. The authority in my tone was absolute. This house is not for sale. It never was. You are trespassing on a crime scene. They didn't need to be told twice. The husband grabbed his wife's hand and they bolted out the door, leaving it wide open. I turned my full attention to Kylie. She was pressing herself against the wall, shaking. "Please, Mr. King," she squeaked. "Tiffany told me..." She showed me the death certificate. I mean the power of attorney. She said you were in a home that you didn't know. "Where is my wife?" I asked. "What, my wife?" I roared, stepping into her personal space, her urn, the blue vase. "Where is it?" Kylie burst into tears. "It is in the trunk," she sobbed, pointing toward the driveway. Tiffany told me to toss everything in the dumpster, but I couldn't. I kept the vase because it looked expensive. "It is in my car." I felt a wave of relief so strong it almost knocked me over, but I held my ground. "Give me the keys," I demanded, holding out my hand. She fumbled in her purse and dropped a set of keys into my palm. "Now get out," I said, "and tell your cousin that if she wants to sell this house, she is going to have to tear it down with me inside it." Kylie ran. She ran out the door, stumbling in her heels, leaving her broken tablet on the floor. I walked out to her car, a flashy white sedan parked in my driveway. I popped the trunk. There, amidst a pile of open house signs and brochures, was the blue ceramic vase. I picked it up. It was cool to the touch. I held it against my chest, closing my eyes. "I am sorry, Viola," I whispered. "I am so sorry I let them touch you." I walked back into my empty house. I placed the urn on the mantel in the center where it belonged. It was the only thing in the room. I looked around at the empty space. They had taken the furniture. They had taken the memories. But they hadn't taken the house. The walls were still standing. The foundation was still solid. And so was I. I took out my phone. I had a text from Darius. "Dad, please call me. We are worried." I didn't reply. I dialed a different number. A number I hadn't called in years, but one I knew by heart. "Julian," I said when the voice answered. "It is Otis. I need you to meet me at the First National Bank in 20 minutes. Bring your briefcase. We are going to execute a demolition order." The taxi driver was staring at me in the rear-view mirror. His eyes flicked from my face to the red message on his payment terminal. Transaction declined. It beeped a second time. A sharp, insolent sound that seemed to echo in the sudden silence of the cab. I tried again. I swiped the card slowly, deliberately. I knew there was over $40,000 in that checking account. It was my pension deposit account. The money was there. But the machine beeped again. Declined. Contact issuer. I looked at the card in my hand. It was a platinum Visa I had carried for 15 years. It had paid for flights to Europe, for dinners with senators, and for the funeral of my wife. Now it was a piece of useless plastic. "I apologize," I said, my voice steady, though my pulse was beginning to race. The driver sighed loudly. "Look, buddy, if you do not have the money, just say so. I do not have time for games." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the emergency cash I had taken from the hollow brick. I handed him a $50 bill. "Keep the change." I got out of the cab and stood on the sidewalk in front of the First National Bank. The building was a glass and steel structure I had consulted on back in '92. I knew the load limits of the atrium floor. I knew the tensile strength of the columns, and I knew that inside my money was being held hostage. Tiffany moved fast. She must have called the bank the moment she realized I wasn't in the guest room. She would have used the power of attorney she claimed to have, or simply told them I was mentally compromised. Banks are terrified of liability. All it takes is one phone call alleging dementia, and they lock the vaults down tighter than a submarine. I walked through the revolving doors. The air conditioning was freezing, a sharp contrast to the humid Atlanta morning. I walked straight to the teller line. I kept my back straight. I adjusted my jacket. I was Otis King, and I was not going to be treated like an invalid. I slid my card and ID across the marble counter. I would like to make a withdrawal, I told the teller, a young woman with long braids. $5,000. She smiled professionally and typed into her computer. Then her smile faltered. She typed again, harder this time. Her eyes darted up to meet mine, then quickly looked away. She reached for the phone under the counter. "One moment, Mr. King," she said. "I just need a supervisor override." She didn't need an override. She was calling security. I saw the silent alarm light blink on the panel behind her. 2 minutes later, a man in a cheap blue suit walked out from the back offices. He was young, maybe 30, white, with a haircut that cost more than his shoes. He had the soft hands of a man who had never held a shovel. His name tag read, Mr. Henderson, branch manager. He didn't extend his hand. He stood 3 feet away from me, his arms crossed over his chest, a posture of defensive arrogance. "Mr. King," he said, his voice loud enough for the people in the line behind me to hear. "We have a problem with your account." "There is no problem," I said. "It is my money. I want it." "Mr. King, we received a notification this morning from your primary caregiver regarding your condition." "My condition?" I repeated. My voice dropped an octave. It was the voice I used when a contractor tried to use subpar cement. "And who exactly is my primary caregiver?" "Your daughter-in-law, Mrs. Tiffany King. She informed us that you have been experiencing severe cognitive decline and wandering. She requested a freeze on all assets for your own protection until the legal guardianship paperwork is finalized." Guardianship. The word hung in the air. She wasn't just claiming power of attorney anymore. She was going for the throat. "I am not wandering, Mr. Henderson," I said. "I am standing in my bank asking for my money. Unfreeze the account. Now." "I cannot do that," Henderson said with a smirk that masqueraded as pity. "The system has flagged you as a vulnerable adult. For your safety, I cannot release funds to you without your guardian present. In fact, I have already instructed my staff to call your son. He is on his way to pick you up." He had called Darius. He was holding me here like a lost child waiting for his parents. "You had no right to do that," I said, stepping closer. Henderson took a step back, his hand hovering near the panic button on the wall. "Please calm down, Mr. King. Do not make me call the security guard. We do not want a scene. You are confused. It is okay. It happens." I looked at him. I looked at the security guard, a large man with his hand already resting on his taser. I looked at the customers watching the crazy old black man causing a scene. This was their trap. If I yelled, if I got angry, if I showed even an ounce of the rage that was boiling inside me, it would be proof. It would be the evidence they needed to lock me away. "See, he is violent. He is unstable." I took a deep breath. I forced my muscles to relax. I smiled. It was a cold smile. "You are right, Mr. Henderson," I said softly. "I do not want a scene. I will wait." Henderson looked relieved. He pointed to the waiting area. "Have a seat. Your son will be here soon." I walked over to the leather chairs. I sat down. I took out my phone. I didn't call Darius. I dialed a number I had not used in 5 years, but one that was etched into my memory. "Julian," I said, when the line picked up. "Otis." The voice on the other end was raspy like gravel in a mixer. "It has been a long time. Is the bridge falling down?" "The bridge is fine," I said, "but the dam is breaking. I am at First National on Peachtree. They have frozen my accounts based on a phone call from my daughter-in-law. They are holding me here." There was a silence on the line, then the sound of a heavy leather briefcase snapping shut. "I am 3 blocks away," Julian said. "Do not say a word. Do not sign a thing. I will be there in 4 minutes." Julian Weiss was 75 years old. We had met in 1985 when a city inspector tried to shut down one of my sites because I refused to pay a bribe. Julian had walked into that inspector's office with a briefcase full of statutes and walked out with an apology and a permit. He was 5'4", wore suits that were out of fashion in the 90s, and possessed a legal mind that was sharper than a diamond saw. I sat and waited. Henderson watched me from his glass office, checking his watch. He thought he had won. He thought he was doing a good deed protecting the senile old man. 4 minutes later, the revolving doors spun. Julian Weiss walked in. He walked with a cane now, but he moved with the momentum of a freight train. He was wearing a three-piece pinstripe suit and a fedora. He ignored the line. He ignored the teller. He walked straight to Henderson's office and slammed his cane onto the desk. "Who are you?" Henderson stammered, standing up. "I am Mr. King's legal counsel." Julian barked, his voice booming through the silent bank. "And you are about to be the defendant in a discrimination and unlawful detention lawsuit that will cost this bank more than your annual turnover unless you open that screen right now." Henderson blinked. "Sir, I am following protocol. Mr. King has been flagged as incapacitated." Flagged by whom, Julian demanded. By a court order, by a judge, or by a phone call from a woman with a maxed-out credit card and a motive for theft? Henderson faltered. "We received a report." "A report is hearsay," Julian snapped. "Unless you have a court-ordered conservatorship signed by a judge in this county, you are illegally restricting access to my client's funds. That is a violation of Banking Regulations Section 4C. It is also a violation of his civil rights. Do you want me to call the regional manager? Or should I just call the press and tell them First National is profiling senior citizens based on malicious gossip?" Henderson was sweating now. He looked at me sitting calmly in the chair. He looked at Julian, who looked ready to eat him alive. I would need to verify this." Julian threw a document onto the desk. It was an affidavit I had signed 10 years ago when Viola got sick. It was a document giving Julian Weiss full power of attorney in the event of my incapacitation and explicitly stating that no family member was to have access without his approval, even if he were incapacitated, which he clearly is not. Julian said, leaning in close, "I am the only one authorized to make that call. Not his son, not his son's wife. Me. Now unlock the accounts." Henderson typed. His hands were shaking. He clicked the mouse. It is done," he whispered. "The hold is lifted." Julian turned to me. "Otis, come here." I walked into the office. I didn't look at Henderson. He was small. He was nothing. "We are closing these accounts," Julian said. "Transfer everything to the trust account at Chase." "No," I said. Julian looked at me surprised. "Otis, they have access to the routing numbers. They can try this again. Leave the pension account," I said. "Leave the joint checking. Let them see those numbers. Let them think they are winning." "Then why are we here?" Julian asked. "I need to access the indemnity fund," I said. Julian's eyes widened. The indemnity fund, it was an account I had opened in 1990. It was a secret account under a shell corporation named King Structural LLC. It was my rainy day fund money I had saved from consulting gigs that Darius and Viola never knew about. It was money meant to pay legal fees if a building ever collapsed. But a building hadn't collapsed. My life had. Henderson looked confused. "I do not see an indemnity fund here. Search for King Structural LLC," I said, giving him the tax ID number from memory. "I am the sole signatory," Henderson typed. His eyes went wide. There is substantial capital here," he said, his voice changing tone instantly. Respect replaced disdain. "Money has a way of doing that. I want $50,000 in cash," I said. "Large bills. And I want a cashier's check for the remainder to be transferred to a new holding company managed by Mr. Weiss." "Right away, Mr. King," Henderson said. While he went to the vault, Julian pulled me aside. "Otis, what is going on?" he whispered. "You look like you have been poisoned." I said. Julian's face darkened. "Darius. And Tiffany." "I am getting an injunction," Julian said. "We will freeze them out. We will stop the sale of the house. I can have a restraining order by noon." "No," I said. "Otis, are you crazy? They tried to kill you. They are selling your house right now." "I know," I said. "I saw the sign." "Then let me stop it," Julian hissed. "No," I repeated. My voice was cold, steady. "If we stop them now, they will know I am onto them. They will run. They will hide the money they already stole. They will play the victim. I need them to feel safe. I need them to think the plan is working." I looked at the vault door as Henderson walked out carrying a thick envelope. "Let the sale proceed," I told Julian. "Let them sign the papers. Let them think they have sold the house. Let them think they have committed me." "Why?" Julian asked. Because when they reach for the prize, I want them to grab nothing but air, I said, taking the envelope of cash. I want them to sign their names to a felony. I want them to dig the hole so deep that when I kick the ladder away, they will never climb out. I put the cash in my inside pocket. It felt warm against my ribs. Come on, Julian, I said. We have work to do. I need to hire a ghost. A ghost, I need someone they won't see coming, I said. Someone who can get inside their lives while they are too busy looking at my bank account. I walked out of the bank. The sun was high now. My phone buzzed again. Darius. I answered this time. Dad. Where are you? We are at the bank. Henderson said you were there. I am just wandering, son, I said, letting my voice quaver just a little. I got confused. I think I am going to the park. The pigeons are nice there. Dad, stay there. Do not move. We are coming to get you. Okay, son, I said. I will wait. I hung up and tossed the phone into a trash can on the corner. Let them chase a ghost. I had a war to win. I walked down the street toward my son's house, shuffling my feet on the pavement. I let my shoulders slump forward, collapsing my chest inward to make myself look small or frail. I untucked my shirt on one side and messed up my hair. I had to look like a man whose internal structural integrity was failing. I had to look like the confused, wandering old man Tiffany had told the bank I was. It was 2 p.m. The neighborhood was quiet, but I knew eyes were watching. Curtain twitchers, retirees watering their lawns. This was the suburbs where gossip traveled faster than fiber optic internet. I turned into the driveway and stopped. I looked at a tree as if I had never seen a tree before. I reached out and touched the bark, letting my mouth hang open slightly. The front door flew open. Tiffany stormed out. She wasn't wearing the red dress from last night. She was wearing yoga pants and a baggy sweatshirt, looking disheveled and frantic. But it was a curated disheveled. It was the costume of the exhausted martyr. Dad, she screamed, running down the driveway. She didn't run to me. She ran at me. She grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. Where have you been? We have been sick with worry. Darius has been driving around for hours. I looked at her, blinking slowly. I wanted to see the pigeons. Pigeons, Tiffany shouted, her voice pitching up so the neighbors 2 doors down could hear. There are no pigeons here, Otis. You wandered off. You could have been hit by a car. You could have died. She wasn't angry that I was safe. She was angry that I was free. Mrs. Gable from next door was standing by her mailbox watching. Tiffany saw her and immediately shifted gears. Her grip on my arm loosened slightly and she put a hand on my cheek. Oh, Dad, she said loudly, her voice cracking with fake emotion. You scared us so much. Come inside. Let's get you out of the sun. She led me toward the house, guiding me like I was a toddler learning to walk. She looked at Mrs. Gable and shook her head, wiping a non-existent tear from her eye. It is getting worse, she mouthed to the neighbor. Mrs. Gable looked at me with pity. That look. That was the first brick in the wall Tiffany was building around me, a wall of public opinion that said, Otis King is gone. We entered the house. Darius was in the living room pacing. When he saw me, he stopped. He looked relieved, but underneath the relief was fear. Fear of me. Fear of what I knew. Dad, he said, where did you go? I sat on the park bench. I lied, staring at the floor. It was nice. The sun was warm. You cannot just leave, Darius snapped, running a hand through his hair. The bank called. They said you were there causing a scene. I looked up at him. My eyes were clear for just a second. I wanted him to see me. I went to the bank, I said. I wanted buy ice cream. Tiffany slammed the front door shut. The performance for the neighbors was over. Now the cruelty could resume. Ice cream, she hissed. You went to withdraw $50,000 for ice cream, Otis. You are losing your mind. The manager said you were aggressive. He said you were shouting. I shrank back into the sofa. I do not remember shouting. That is the problem, Tiffany said, standing over me, hands on her hips. You do not remember anything. You are a danger to yourself, and you are a danger to us. Do you know how embarrassing it is to have the police call us, to have the bank call us? You are ruining our reputation. I looked at my hands. They were trembling. It wasn't acting. The rage inside me was vibrating against my ribs like a generator running on overload. I am sorry, I whispered. Sorry does not fix it, Tiffany said. She walked into the kitchen and came back with a glass of water and 2 blue pills. Here, she said, thrusting the glass at me. Take these. I looked at the pills. They weren't my blood pressure medication. They weren't my vitamins. They were small, round, and blue. Benzodiazepines again. Maybe stronger this time. "What are these?" I asked, my voice wavering. "Brain supplements," she said. "Dr. Evans prescribed them. They will help with the confusion. They will help you sleep so you do not go wandering into traffic. I do not want to sleep. Take them," she ordered. Her voice was cold, flat, hard. "Take them, or I will call the paramedics and have them strap you down and inject you. Do you want that, Otis? Do you want the neighbors to see you carried out in a straitjacket?" Darius looked away. He couldn't even watch. I took the pills. I put them in my mouth. I took a sip of water. I felt the pills sitting on my tongue, bitter and chalky. I swallowed the water, but I held the pills in the pocket of my cheek, tucked down low by the gum line. It was a trick I had learned from a foreman who used to hide chewing tobacco during site inspections. I opened my mouth to show her. I lifted my tongue. "Good," Tiffany said. "Now go to your room, and do not even think about trying to open that window again." Darius screwed it shut with 3-inch bolts this time. I stood up, swaying slightly to sell the effect. I walked to the guest room. I heard the lock click behind me. The moment I was alone, I rushed to the bathroom sink and spat the pills out. They were already starting to dissolve, leaving a chemically bitter taste in my mouth. I washed my mouth out with tap water, scrubbing my tongue with my thumb. I flushed the blue sludge down the drain. I needed to stay awake. I needed to see what they were doing. I lay on the bed and waited. 10 minutes. 20. I let my breathing slow down. I let my body go limp. Outside the door I heard movement, not the heavy footsteps of Darius, but the quick clicking heels of Tiffany. She was moving furniture in the living room. I heard the scrape of a chair, the adjustment of a lamp, then silence. I crept to the door. I pressed my ear against the wood. "Hello, my loves." Tiffany's voice drifted through the gap. It was soft, tearful trembling. It was the voice of a woman on the edge of a breakdown. I realized with a jolt she wasn't on the phone. She was broadcasting. I got down on my knees and peered through the keyhole. The angle was limited, but I could see a slice of the living room. Tiffany had set up a ring light on a tripod. She was sitting on the sofa holding a tissue. She had changed clothes again. Now she was wearing a faded, oversized t-shirt that made her look small and vulnerable. She had rubbed off her makeup to look pale. She was looking into her phone camera, tears streaming down her face. I do not know what to do anymore," she sobbed into the camera. "We found him today wandering near the highway. He didn't know who he was. He didn't know us. Lies. All of it. It is just so hard seeing a strong man crumble like this," she continued, wiping her nose. "The Alzheimer's is progressing so fast. The doctors say he needs full-time care, specialized memory care, but—" She paused, letting the silence build, looking down at her hands. "But the insurance won't cover it. They say it is a pre-existing condition, and the facility, the Pines, they want $20,000 just for the admission fee. We have tapped out our savings caring for him. We sold our second car. We are drowning, you guys." I felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with the drugs. She was monetizing my life. She was turning me into content. "We want to give Otis the dignity he deserves," she sniffled. "He built this city, you know. He was an engineer, and now he cannot even use a spoon. It breaks my heart." I gripped the doorknob so hard my knuckles turned white. I wanted to kick the door down. I wanted to storm out there and scream into that camera that I was fine, that I was coherent, that she was a predator. But I stopped myself. If I went out there now, I would look like a raving lunatic. I would look violent. I would prove her point. "See, guys, he is aggressive. The dementia makes him violent." I had to watch. I had to let her dig the hole deeper. "I set up a GoFundMe link," she whispered, looking into the lens with big pleading eyes. "Anything helps, even $5. Just help us get Dad into a safe place. Help us save him, please." She reached forward and tapped the phone, ending the broadcast. The moment the camera was off, her posture changed instantly. Her shoulders straightened, the tears stopped as if she had turned off a faucet. She grabbed a tissue and blew her nose loudly, then tossed it on the floor. "Darius," she yelled, her voice harsh and commanding. "Darius, get in here." I heard Darius walk in from the kitchen. "How did it go?" he asked. Tiffany picked up her phone and refreshed the screen. A slow, cruel smile spread across her face. "It went perfect," she said. "Look at this." She turned the phone toward him. Already Darius asked, his eyes widening. "People love a tragedy," Tiffany said, scrolling through the comments. "Look at them. sending prayers. So heartbreaking. Donated 50. You are an angel for taking care of him. She laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. An angel. If they only knew I was about to smother him with a pillow last night. Don't say that, Darius muttered. Shut up, Tiffany snapped. Look at the total. She held the phone up. From my angle through the keyhole, I couldn't see the screen, but I heard Darius gasp. 20,000, he whispered. In 1 hour. $20,000. They had raised $20,000 in 60 minutes by selling the lie of my incompetence. They were selling my dignity, my legacy, and my name to strangers on the internet. That is enough for the lawyer. Tiffany said, her eyes gleaming with greed. That pays for the expedited guardianship filing, and there will be more. I am going to do an update tomorrow, maybe show a video of him sleeping. People pay more when they see the victim. She stood up, stretching her arms over her head. God, I am good at this, she said. We should check on him, Darius said, looking toward my door. He is out, Tiffany said, waving her hand dismissively. I gave him a double dose. He won't wake up until tomorrow afternoon. And when he does, he won't know what day it is. She walked toward the kitchen. I'm going to pour a glass of wine. We are celebrating Darius. We are rich. Darius lingered for a moment, staring at my door. I held my breath. For a second, I thought he might come in, might check on me, might see that my eyes were open and clear, but he didn't. He turned and followed his wife like a dog following its master. I moved away from the door. I sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. $20,000. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It wasn't just about the inheritance. I was a cash cow. As long as I was sick, as long as I was confused, as long as I was a tragedy, they could milk sympathy and money from the world. They needed me to be broken. I lay back on the pillow, staring at the ceiling. My heart was cold. My mind was a blueprint. She wanted a tragedy. She wanted a show. I was going to give her one. But the ending wasn't going to be the one she wrote. The ending was going to be a demolition. And when the dust settled, everyone who donated, everyone who commented, everyone who watched would see exactly what was rotting underneath the floorboards of the King family. I closed my eyes not to sleep but to visualize. Tomorrow I talk to Darius. Tomorrow I give him the rope. Let's see if he hangs himself or pulls me up. The shower upstairs was running. I could hear the pipes rattling in the walls. Tiffany was washing away the hangover from her celebration wine. That gave me 15 minutes. Maybe 20 if she decided to do her hair. It was a small window, but in construction, a small window is often all you need to pour the critical concrete. I walked to the door that led to the garage. It was unlocked. I turned the handle silently and stepped onto the cold concrete floor. Darius was sitting on an overturned bucket next to his workbench. The garage was a mess of half-finished projects. A lawnmower engine taken apart and never put back together. A stack of wood for a bookshelf he promised to build 3 years ago. It was a museum of good intentions and failed execution. He was staring at his phone, the blue light illuminating a face that looked 10 years older than it should. He didn't hear me come in. I stood there for a moment watching him. I remembered teaching him how to hold a hammer in this very garage back when it was my garage. I remembered the pride in his eyes when he drove his first nail straight. Where had that boy gone? Darius, I said, my voice low and level. He jumped so hard he almost tipped the bucket over. He scrambled to his feet, hiding the phone behind his back like a teenager caught smoking. Dad, he stammered. Jesus, you scared me. You should be in bed. Tiffany said you need rest. Tiffany says a lot of things, I said, walking further into the room. I ignored the clutter, stepping over a coil of extension cord. I stopped 3 feet from him. I wanted to look him in the eye. I wanted to see if there was anything left of my son in there. We need to talk, son. Without your wife. Darius looked at the door leading to the house, then back at me. His eyes were darting around, unable to settle. We can talk later, Dad. I have to clean up out here. No, I said. Now. I leaned against the workbench, pushing aside a box of rusted screws. I saw the sign, Darius. He froze. What sign? The sign in front of my house, I said, keeping my gaze locked on his face. The one that says pending sale. The one that says Century Elite Realty. Darius's face went gray. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. I do not know what you are talking about, he lied. His voice was thin, reedy. Maybe the neighbors put it there. A prank. Or maybe you saw the wrong house, Dad. You were confused yesterday. Remember, you wandered off. He was doubling down. Even here alone with me, he was sticking to the script Tiffany had written for him. It broke my heart, but it also hardened it. Stop it, I snapped. The command cracked through the air like a whip. Do not lie to me. I went inside. The house is empty, Darius. Viola's piano is gone. Her pictures are gone. You cleared it out. You sold it. He flinched. He looked like he was about to cry or run. Dad, look. It is complicated. The pipes. The damage was so bad. The insurance. There were no pipes, I said, cutting through his stammering. There was no water, just you and Tiffany, and a greed so big it swallowed my home whole. I took a step closer. He backed up until he hit the garage door. Why, son, I asked. My voice softened, not out of weakness, but out of genuine bewilderment. I gave you everything. I paid for your college. I bought you your first car. I put the down payment on this house. Why steal mine? Darius looked down at his shoes. Expensive sneakers he couldn't afford. We needed the money, he whispered. It is. Dad, we are in trouble. Bad trouble. The business failed. I owe people. Bad people. Tiffany. She said it was the only way. She said you wouldn't miss it. That you would be happier at the Pines. She lied, I said. And you let her. He didn't answer. He just stood there vibrating with shame. I looked at him, and I saw a drowning man, a man who had tied weights to his own ankles and was blaming the ocean. I knew I couldn't save him, not fully, but I had to offer him a lifeline, one last test, one last chance to cut the rope. I took a breath. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a key. It wasn't a house key. It was an old brass key for a safety deposit box. It was a prop I had kept on my keychain for 20 years, a relic from a bank that didn't exist anymore. Listen to me, Darius, I said, lowering my voice to a conspiratorial whisper. I moved closer, making him feel like we were partners again, like we were conspiring against the world. I know Tiffany is pushing this. I know she is the one pulling the strings. Darius looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. Yeah, she is. She is intense, Dad. You know how she gets. I nodded. I do. That is why I never told her about the box. He frowned. What box? The safety deposit box, I lied, smooth and confident. At the downtown branch. I held up the key. The brass caught the overhead fluorescent light. I didn't keep all my money in the accounts, Darius. I worked in the 70s and 80s. I didn't trust banks back then. I kept the consulting fees from the bridge projects in gold, Krugerrands, and cash. Darius's eyes widened. He was looking at the key like it was the Holy Grail. How much he breathed. About 400,000, I said. Maybe 5. The price of gold has gone up. I saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. $500,000. Enough to pay his debts. Enough to buy his freedom. Enough to make Tiffany love him again. Or enough to leave her. It is sitting there, I said. And if Tiffany commits me, if she gets that guardianship, she will find the key. She will take it all, Darius. She won't give you a dime. You know that, don't you? He nodded slowly. He knew. He knew exactly who he married. So here's the deal, I said. You drive me there, right now, while she is in the shower. We go to the bank, I empty the box, and I give you half. $250,000. Cash. No questions asked. You can pay off your sharks. You can breathe again. Darius looked at the key, then at the door to the house, then back at me. Half he asked, half I promised. But we have to go now. If she finds out, if she stops us, the money is gone. Do we have a deal? He licked his lips. He looked at the door one last time. Then he nodded. A jerky, desperate nod. Okay. Okay, Dad. Let's do it. I will drive. Good, I said. Get your keys. He patted his pockets. They are on the hook by the door. I will grab them. Stay here. Do not make a sound. He walked past me toward the door that led into the kitchen. He was moving fast, energized by greed and relief. He thought he had found a way out of the trap. He thought he was playing both sides. I watched him go. I watched him put his hand on the doorknob. Then he stopped. He didn't open the door. He paused. He pulled his phone out of his pocket again. I stepped silently to the side, moving into the shadow of a storage rack. I had a clear view of his wrist. He was wearing a smartwatch, an expensive one. I knew it well because I had bought it for him last Christmas. I had engraved the back with "Time is the structural integrity of life." He probably never read it. He wasn't looking at his phone screen. He was tapping on the watch face using the voice-to-text feature. He brought his wrist up to his mouth. He thought I couldn't hear him. He thought I was an old man with bad ears standing by the workbench. But I was an engineer. I knew acoustics, and I was standing 5 feet away. He whispered into the watch. The old man remembers a safety deposit box, gold and cash. He wants to go now. Get the guardianship papers ready. I am driving him straight to Evans. We can take the key off him there. He tapped send. I saw the message bubble pop up on the glowing screen of the watch. The text was crisp and clear against the black background. Sent. Then a reply popped up almost instantly. Tiffany, good boy. Do not let him out of your sight. Evans is waiting. Darius lowered his wrist. He took a deep breath, composed his face into a mask of filial concern, and turned around. I was standing right where he left me, leaning on the workbench, looking old and tired. Got them, he said, holding up his car keys and smiling. A smile that was all teeth and panic. Let's go, Dad. Let's go get that gold. I looked at him. I looked at the son I had held in my arms when he was born, the son I had taught to be a man. He was gone. The man standing in front of me was a husk, a hollow shell filled with rot. Okay, son, I said, my voice flat. Let's go. I walked toward him. I walked past him. I walked out to the car. He thought he was driving me to a doctor who would lock me away. He thought he was driving me to my end. But he was wrong. He was driving the getaway car for his own destruction. I got into the passenger seat. Darius started the engine. You sure you know the way, Dad? He asked, trying to sound casual. Oh, yes, I said, buckling my seatbelt. I know exactly where we are going. We pulled out of the driveway. I didn't look back at the house. I looked at the road ahead. You made your choice, Darius, I thought as we turned onto the main road. You chose the poison. Now you have to drink it. We drove past the turn for the downtown bank without slowing down. Darius kept his hands gripped tight on the steering wheel, his knuckles white as bone. He was staring straight ahead, refusing to look at me, refusing to acknowledge the geography of the city we had both lived in our entire lives. You missed the turn, son, I said, my voice calm. The bank is on Peachtree. Shortcut, Darius muttered. Construction on the highway. GPS says this is faster. There was no construction. I knew the city grid better than the city planners did. I knew the load-bearing capacity of every overpass and the traffic flow of every artery. We were heading west toward the industrial district where the zoning laws were loose and the buildings were old. I didn't argue. I didn't reach for the wheel. I sat back and watched the scenery change from the gleaming glass towers of the financial district to the cracked pavement and chain-link fences of the neglected edge of town. We pulled up to a facility that looked less like a care home and more like a minimum security prison. A faded sign swung on a rusted post. Sunny Meadows Assisted Living. The building was a single-story concrete block structure painted a cheerful yellow that was peeling away to reveal the gray rot underneath. There were bars on the windows, not decorative ironwork but heavy security bars bolted into the masonry. Darius stopped the car. He didn't turn off the engine. He just sat there, breathing hard, the air conditioning blasting against the silence. This is not the bank, I said. I am sorry, Dad, Darius whispered. His voice was trembling. I am so sorry. It is for the best. You need help. You need supervision. The front door of the facility opened. Tiffany walked out. She wasn't wearing her martyr costume anymore. She was wearing a sharp business suit and a look of absolute triumph. Flanking her were 2 men in white scrubs. They were not doctors. They were muscle. Thick necks, broad shoulders, eyes that looked at me like I was a sack of laundry to be hauled. Get him out, Tiffany commanded, pointing at the car. The 2 men marched toward us. Darius unlocked the doors. I opened my own door and stepped out before they could grab me. The heat of the afternoon hit me, mixing with the smell of exhaust and damp earth. I stood up straight, adjusting my jacket. I saw the orderlies hesitate. They were expecting a frail, confused old man. Instead, they saw Otis King. Tiffany marched over her heels, clicking on the cracked asphalt. "Do not make this difficult, Otis," she said. "We have the papers. Emergency medical custody." "You are a danger to yourself. We are just doing what needs to be done." She waved a sheaf of documents in my face. I saw the signature at the bottom, a scrawl I recognized from a lifetime of reading blueprints and permits. The two orderlies moved in closer, closing off my escape routes. Darius got out of the car and stood by the hood looking at his shoes, unable to watch the betrayal he had driven me to. "Where is the gold?" Dad Darius mumbled. "Where is the key?" Tiffany snapped her head toward him. "Shut up, Darius. We will find it when they process his personal effects." She turned back to me. "Inside Otis. Now. Or do we have to sedate you again?" I didn't move. I looked past her to the man standing in the doorway of the facility. He was wearing a white coat that was too tight around the middle. He was wiping sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. He had aged 20 years and gained 50 pounds, but I never forget a face, especially the face of a man who tries to cut corners on a load-bearing wall. "Dr. Evans," I assume I said, my voice projecting clearly across the lot. The doctor looked up surprised. He walked slowly down the steps clutching a clipboard. "Mr. King," he said, his voice oily and practiced. "I am Dr. Evans, the medical director here. Your family tells me you have been having some episodes. Why don't you come inside so we can get you settled? We have a nice room for you. Very secure," he signaled the orderlies. One of them reached out and grabbed my upper arm. His grip was hard, painful. I didn't struggle. I didn't pull away. I just looked Evans dead in the eye. 1998, I said. Evans froze. His smile faltered just a fraction. "Excuse me," he said. "Atlanta General Hospital." I continued, keeping my eyes locked on his. "The North Wing Extension. You were the project administrator. I was the structural inspector." The color drained from Evans's face so fast it looked like a shade had been pulled down. He stopped walking. He raised a hand, signaling the orderlies to wait. "I do not know what you are talking about," he said, but his voice had lost its oil. It was dry and brittle. "I think you do," I said. "I think you remember the concrete samples, Dr. Evans. You remember the mix ratio. You remember how you tried to swap out the rebar for a cheaper grade steel to pocket the difference. You remember the cracks in the foundation before the ribbon was even cut." Tiffany looked between us, confusion clouding her arrogance. "What is he talking about?" "Doctor, just take him inside. He is delirious. This is part of the dementia." "He is not delirious," Evans whispered. He was staring at me like I was the Grim Reaper himself. "I refused to sign off on the safety permit," I said, stepping closer to him. The orderly released my arm, instinctively sensing the shift in power. "I told you that building would collapse if you didn't reinforce the pilings. You tried to bribe me. $10,000 in a brown envelope. I threw it back in your face." Evans took a step back. He was trembling. "You disappeared after that," I said. "The project was halted. An investigation was launched. They never found the administrator who authorized the purchase orders. They never found the money. But I remember the signature on the change logs, and I see it right there on those commitment papers in Tiffany's hand." I pointed to the documents. "That is your signature, isn't it, Evans? The same loop on the E, the same sharp strike on the S." Evans looked at the papers, then at me. He looked at the facility behind him, a place where he was hiding, where he was playing God with vulnerable people because he couldn't work in a real hospital anymore. "If I make one phone call," I said, my voice low and hard, dropping the final beam into place. "If I call the licensing board, if I call the district attorney and tell them I found the ghost of the North Wing, how long do you think this place stays open? How long before you are trading that white coat for an orange jumpsuit?" Evans snatched the clipboard from his own hand. He ripped the top sheet off the medical evaluation that declared me incompetent. He crumpled it in his fist. "I cannot admit this patient," he said, his voice shaking. "What?" Tiffany shrieked. She grabbed his arm. "What are you doing? We paid you. We have a deal." "The deal is off," Evans hissed, pulling away from her. "Get him off my property. Now." "I do not know him. I never saw him. Do not come back here." He turned and ran back toward the building, moving faster than a man of his size should be able to. He slammed the heavy metal door, and I heard the deadbolt slide home. The orderlies looked at each other, then at Tiffany, then at me. They were muscle, but they weren't stupid. They saw the fear in their boss's eyes. They backed away, hands raised, and retreated into the building, leaving us alone in the parking lot. Tiffany stood there, mouth open, the crumpled papers in her hand, flapping in the breeze. Her plan, her perfect trap had just dissolved because she didn't do her homework. She didn't know that when you build a life on shortcuts, you eventually run into the inspector. You ruined it, she screamed, throwing the papers at me. You old bastard, you ruined everything. I watched the papers flutter to the dirty asphalt. I didn't ruin anything, Tiffany, I said. I just inspected the foundation, and it failed. Darius was leaning against the car, his face buried in his hands. He was sobbing quietly. We are dead, he moaned. We are dead. The loan sharks. They are going to kill me, Dad. I looked at my son. I felt a pang of pity, but it was distant, like watching a stranger on the news. You should have thought of that before you tried to lock your father in a cage, I said. I turned and walked away. Where are you going? Tiffany yelled, chasing after me. You cannot leave. You have no money. You have no cards. We froze everything. You are stuck with us, Otis. Get in the car. I kept walking toward the main road. I didn't look back. I have more than you know, I called out over my shoulder. I walked to the bus stop at the corner. My legs were tired, but my spirit was soaring. I sat on the bench and waited. I took out the burner phone I had bought with the cash from the bank. I dialed Julian's number. It is done, I said. Evans is out of the picture. He won't be signing any more papers. Good, Julian said. But Otis, you need to get off the street. Tiffany won't stop. She is desperate. Desperate people are dangerous. I know, I said, watching a black SUV slow down as it passed me. She is going to try the courts next, Julian said. She will file for emergency guardianship ex parte. She will claim you are violent. She will claim you threatened her. Let her, I said. Otis, Julian warned. You need a safe harbor. Go to the Regency Hotel. I booked a suite under my name. Room 404. Do not go home. Do not go to your friends. She will look there. I will go to the hotel, I said. But I need you to do something for me first. What? Find Maya, I said. The waitress. Why? Because I need eyes inside the enemy camp, I said. And right now she is the only person in this city who hates bullies as much as I do. I hung up. The bus arrived. I got on and paid with cash. As we pulled away, I saw Darius's car speeding out of the parking lot of Sunny Meadows. They were chasing me. But they were chasing the wrong man. The Otis King they knew, the quiet engineer who just wanted to retire in peace, was gone. The man on the bus was the demolition expert, and the charges were already set. The Regency Hotel suite was nicer than the one at the Grand Imperial, but it felt just as much like a bunker. I sat in the armchair with the curtains drawn, watching the dust motes dance in the sliver of light that cut across the room. Julian was on the phone, pacing the carpet, his voice low and urgent. She did it, Julian said, hanging up. She filed ex parte for emergency guardianship an hour ago. She is claiming you threatened to burn the house down. She is claiming you have a history of violent outbursts due to dementia. She even included a sworn affidavit from Darius saying he is terrified for his safety. I looked at my hands. They were steady. The only thing I wanted to burn down was the web of lies they had spun around me. Let them file, I said. It puts them on the record. What is the court date? Thursday, Julian said. That gives us 48 hours. But Otis, if the judge grants the temporary order, the police will be looking for you. They will drag you to a psych ward for evaluation. You need to stay invisible. I am not hiding, Julian, I said, standing up. I am flanking them. There was a knock at the door. Julian tensed, reaching for his briefcase like it was a weapon. It is okay, I said. I am expecting company. I opened the door. Maya stood there. She wasn't wearing her waitress uniform. She was wearing jeans and a hoodie, looking like any other college student, but her eyes were sharp alert. She held a large coffee in one hand and a manila envelope in the other. Mr. King, she said, I quit my job. You didn't have to do that, I said, ushering her in. My manager told me if I testified about the video, he would fire me anyway, Maya said, shrugging. He knows Tiffany's family, small-town politics in a big city, so I beat him to it. I motioned for her to sit. Julian looked at her skeptically, but I waved him off. Maya, this is Julian, my lawyer. Julian, this is the woman who saved my life. Maya nodded at him, then turned to me. You said you needed eyes inside the camp. What is the plan? I reached into the hotel safe and pulled out a stack of cash. $5,000. I need you to go shopping, I said. Buy something that looks expensive. Something that screams old money or tech money. I do not care, just look like someone who buys houses with cash. Maya raised an eyebrow. And then I want you to call Century Elite Realty, I said. Ask for Kylie. Tell her you are looking for a historic property in the district. Tell her you heard about a specific brick colonial on Highland Avenue that might be coming to market off the books. You want me to try to buy your house? Maya asked. I want you to get her talking, I said. Kylie is weak, she is greedy, and she is scared. If she thinks she has a cash buyer on the hook, she will talk. I need to know the numbers. I need to know exactly how they plan to split the money. And I need it on tape. Maya took the cash. Her face was grim, determined. I can do that. I did 2 years of theater before I switched to nursing. Be careful, I said. Tiffany is dangerous, but she is arrogant. She won't look at you twice. She doesn't see people who serve her. She only sees what she can take from them. Maya left. Julian looked at me. You are enjoying this, aren't you? I am an engineer, Julian, I said, walking to the window. I enjoy seeing how much stress a structure can take before it fails. And we are about to load Test Tiffany to the breaking point. 6 hours later, my burner phone buzzed. It was a video file from Maya. I opened it. The video was shaky at first, then stabilized. It was shot from a hidden camera, probably a button cam or a phone in a breast pocket. The audio was crystal clear. The setting was a coffee shop downtown. Kylie was sitting across the table. She looked nervous, her eyes darting around the room, but when she saw the fake bank statement Maya slid across the table, her eyes lit up like neon signs. Cash, Kylie whispered. Full asking price. If we can close by Friday, Maya's voice said, calm, confident. My client needs to move assets quickly. Friday. Kylie bit her lip. The title. There is a small issue with the title. The owner is unavailable. Is there a lien? Maya asked. No, Kylie waved her hand. It is just family stuff. My cousin has the power of attorney. We just need to wait for the judge to stamp the guardianship papers on Thursday, but we can sign a preliminary agreement now. If you put down a deposit, we can lock it in. How much of a deposit? 50,000, Kylie said. Non-refundable. Cash or wire. That is steep, Maya said. Who gets the money? Kylie leaned in, lowering her voice. Look between us, I need this deal. My cousin Tiffany, she promised me 10% of the sale price if I move it fast. She needs the rest to pay off some medical debts. The doctor, he is expensive. What doctor? Some specialist, Kylie said, rolling her eyes. She calls him her savior. Dr. Evans. He is helping with the old man's care. But honestly, I think she is paying him for more than just prescriptions, if you know what I mean. I froze. What do you mean? Maya asked, pressing gently. I saw them. Kylie giggled a nervous, tipsy sound. Last week, at the house, while Darius was at work. His car was in the driveway, a silver Mercedes. And let's just say they weren't checking the old man's blood pressure. The video ended. I sat there in the silence of the hotel room. The rage I felt before was a hot fire. This was different. This was ice. Tiffany wasn't just using Dr. Evans to commit me. She was sleeping with him. She was cheating on Darius with the man she hired to destroy his father. It made sense. The familiarity on the phone, the way she spoke to him. Honey. It wasn't just a transaction. It was a conspiracy born in bed. Poor Darius. He was a coward and a thief, but he was doing it all for a woman who was laughing at him behind his back with the accomplice. I forwarded the video to Julian. Add adultery to the list, I typed, and conspiracy to commit fraud with a lover. Then I texted Maya. Great work. Do not sign anything. Tell her you need 24 hours to move the funds. Then tail Kylie. If she meets Tiffany, I want to know. I put the phone down. I needed to think about the next phase. They were desperate for cash. Kylie had asked for a $50,000 deposit. That meant Evans was squeezing them. Or maybe Tiffany was planning to take the money and run with the doctor, leaving Darius holding the bag. I had to accelerate the timeline. I had to give them a target so big, so tempting that they would forget about caution and reach right into the bear trap. I thought about the blue drafting tube sitting in the back of the closet in my home office, the one marked Project Atlas. Most people knew me as a good engineer. Few knew I was an inventor. In 1982, after the Skywalk collapse in Kansas City, I designed a new type of steel coupling, the King joint. It was a flexible load-bearing connector that could withstand harmonic resonance better than anything on the market. I patented it. I licensed it to 3 major steel manufacturers. Every time a bridge was built in this state, every time a skyscraper went up in Atlanta, a fraction of a cent from every bolt and beam went into a blind trust. I never touched it. I never spent it. It was for the future. It was for the grandchildren I hoped to have. It was for a legacy that went beyond brick and mortar. Over 40 years, fractions of cents add up. The trust was currently valued at $12 million. Tiffany didn't know about it. Darius didn't know about it. Viola knew, but she never cared for money, so she never spoke of it. But the paperwork was in the house. If Tiffany was as desperate as Kylie said, she would be tearing that house apart looking for anything of value. She would be looking for the gold I lied about. She wouldn't find gold. She would find the patent. I picked up the phone and called the security company that managed the trust's physical documents. "This is Otis King," I said. "Authorization code Delta 94. Go ahead, Mr. King. I need you to activate the passive monitoring on the physical file located at 420 Highland Avenue. And I need you to flag any digital transfer requests for the King patent as high priority." "Understood, sir." "Should we block unauthorized attempts?" "No," I said. "Do not block them. Just trace them. Let them think it went through. Sir, that is highly risky." "I know," I said. "Just do it. And send the alert to this number." I hung up. Now I just had to wait. Across town in the house I built, Tiffany was probably screaming at Darius for losing me. She was probably throwing things. She would start looking for the safety deposit box key I had told Darius about. She wouldn't find it because it didn't exist. So she would keep looking. She would look under the floorboards. She would look in the attic. And eventually she would look in the old drafting tubes in the back of the closet. 3 hours later, my phone chirped. A silent notification from the trust's security system. Physical file accessed. Location master bedroom closet. Time 1942. She found it. I closed my eyes and visualized the scene. Tiffany sitting on the floor, surrounded by my old blueprints, holding the patent deed. She would be reading it. She would be Googling the patent number. She would see the valuation. Her eyes would widen. Her breath would catch. $12 million. It was enough to make her forget about the house. Enough to make her forget about Darius. Enough to make her do something stupid. My phone chirped again 30 minutes later. Login attempt detected. King Trust portal. IP address traces to local residential ISP. She was trying to log in. She must have found the old access codes I kept in the file, but she would need a signature to authorize a transfer. A wet signature notarized and uploaded, or a digital signature forged with a stylus on a stolen iPad. I watched the screen of my phone. Transfer request initiated. Amount full balance. Beneficiary Tifco Consulting LLC. Signature verification pending. She was doing it. She wasn't waiting for guardianship. She wasn't waiting for a court order. She was forging my signature right now. She was stealing $12 million that she thought was just sitting there for the taking. I watched the status bar change. Signature verification failed. Manual override attempted. She was forcing it. She was desperate. Secondary authorization required. The system was asking for a biometric scan or a secondary password. She didn't have it. I smiled. She was hitting the steel wall. Then the notification changed. Bypass protocol initiated. Document uploaded. Emergency medical proxy. She was using the fake papers Evans had signed. She was uploading the fraudulent medical power of attorney to override the security. System alert. Override accepted. Transfer processing. She thought she had done it. She thought she had bypassed the lock. But she didn't know that the transfer processing message was a dummy screen. The money wasn't moving anywhere. The only thing moving was a digital packet of evidence straight to the FBI's Cybercrime Division server where my old friend Agent Miller had set up a honeypot at my request 10 years ago. Alert federal flag triggered, wire fraud detected, location tagged. I set the phone down on the hotel nightstand. The trap wasn't just sprung. It had snapped shut around her neck and she didn't even feel the teeth yet. She would be celebrating right now. She would be calling Evans, telling him they were rich, telling him to pack his bags. Let them celebrate. Let them open the champagne, because tomorrow I was crashing the party, and I wasn't bringing a gift. I was bringing the wrecking ball. The gavel came down with a sound like a gunshot echoing through the wood-paneled courtroom. Judge Harriet Monroe looked over her spectacles at the assembly. She was a woman known for her impatience with family squabbles and her absolute adherence to the letter of the law. Case number 492. In the matter of the emergency guardianship of Otis King versus Tiffany King petitioner versus Otis King respondent. I sat at the defendant's table. Julian was next to me sorting through a stack of files with the calm demeanor of a man who knows he holds a royal flush. Across the aisle, Tiffany sat next to her lawyer, a slick man named Mr. Calloway, who wore a suit that cost more than my first car. Darius was there too, sitting in the gallery behind his wife, his head bowed like a man waiting for an execution. Tiffany was performing. She was wearing a modest navy dress, no jewelry and minimal makeup. She dabbed at her dry eyes with a tissue every few seconds. She looked like the picture of a concerned, loving daughter-in-law forced into a heartbreaking decision. Your Honor, Mr. Calloway began standing up and buttoning his jacket. This is a tragic case, a case of a family trying desperately to protect a patriarch who has lost his way. My client, Mrs. King, has been the sole caregiver for Mr. King since his wife passed away. She has sacrificed her career, her savings, and her emotional well-being to care for a man who, unfortunately, has become a danger to himself and others. Objection, Julian said without looking up from his papers. Counsel is testifying, sustained, Judge Monroe said. Get to the evidence, Mr. Calloway. Why do we need an emergency order? Because, Your Honor. Calloway said, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. Mr. King is violent. His dementia has progressed to a stage of aggressive paranoia. He has threatened my client. He has threatened his own son. He has wandered into traffic. And just 3 days ago, he threatened to burn down the family home. Lies. All of it. I kept my face impassive. I stared straight ahead. Do you have proof of these allegations? The judge asked. We do, Your Honor, Calloway said. We have sworn affidavits from the petitioner and her husband. We have medical records indicating a rapid cognitive decline. And we have video evidence. Video evidence. I felt a flicker of surprise. I looked at Julian. He raised an eyebrow but didn't speak. Calloway walked to the evidence monitor. He plugged in a flash drive. This video was taken 2 days ago, he said, inside the home of Darius and Tiffany King. It shows the respondent in a state of agitated delirium, destroying property and making threats. The screen flickered to life. It was me, or at least it looked like me. I was standing in the living room of Darius's house. I was holding a baseball bat. I was screaming words that were muffled but sounded angry. I swung the bat and smashed a lamp. Then I turned to the camera, my face twisted in rage, and yelled, I will burn it all down. You hear me? I will burn you all. The courtroom gasped. I heard whispers in the gallery. Look at him. He is crazy. I watched the screen. My heart hammered against my ribs. I had never done that. I had never held a bat in that house. I had never screamed those words. But the man on the screen wore my clothes. He had my face. He had my voice. It is a deep fake, Julian whispered to me, his voice low. Or a very good edit. They probably filmed you pacing or gesturing and digitally inserted the bat and the audio. It is sophisticated, expensive. Tiffany was sobbing now, her shoulders shaking. He scares me, she wailed softly. I love him, but I am terrified of him. Judge Monroe looked at me, her expression hardening. Mr. Weiss, do you have a response to this footage? Julian stood up slowly. He didn't look at the screen. He didn't look at Tiffany. He looked directly at the judge. Your Honor, we do not dispute that the man on the screen appears to be my client. We do not dispute that the behavior shown is erratic and violent. I looked at Julian shocked. Was he selling me out? However, Julian continued, his voice gaining strength, we dispute the cause. The petitioner claims this behavior is the result of dementia. Alzheimer's, a natural cognitive decline. Yes, Calloway interrupted. That is exactly what it is. Is it? Julian asked, turning to face Tiffany. Or is it the result of a deliberate systematic poisoning designed to mimic the symptoms of dementia? The room went silent. Tiffany stopped sobbing mid-breath. Calloway froze. Poisoning, Judge Monroe asked, leaning forward. That is a serious accusation, Counselor. Do you have proof? I do, Julian said. He picked up a document from his table. I have here a toxicology report from the Midtown Private Clinic dated 3 days ago. It shows that my client had lethal levels of lorazepam and synthetic sedatives in his bloodstream, drugs that were never prescribed to him, drugs that cause confusion, aggression, and memory loss. "Objection," Calloway shouted. "That report is inadmissible. We have not seen it. It could be forged." "And the video could be forged," Julian shot back. "But biology doesn't lie." He walked to the bench and handed the report to the judge. She put on her glasses and read it. Her frown deepened. "Mr. Calloway, do you have an explanation for why your client's father-in-law had enough sedatives in his system to tranquilize an elephant?" I have no knowledge of this," Calloway stammered. "Maybe he took them himself. Maybe he is an addict. That would explain the behavior." "An addict?" Julian laughed. A 72-year-old engineer with no history of substance abuse suddenly becomes a benzo junkie. "Unlikely. But we can settle this right now, Your Honor." "How?" the judge asked. "Hair," Julian said. He turned and pointed a finger at me. "If my client has been taking these drugs voluntarily for months, as an addict, the evidence will be in his hair follicles. But if this was a recent acute poisoning event, or a series of recent events coinciding with his visits to his son's house, the hair will tell a different story. It will show a timeline. It will show exactly when the toxins were introduced." He looked at Tiffany. She was pale. She was gripping the table with white knuckles. "We request an immediate court-ordered hair follicle test," Julian said, "to be conducted by a neutral third-party lab. Right now. Today." Calloway looked at Tiffany. He saw the fear in her eyes. He realized he was standing on a trapdoor. "Your Honor, this is a delay tactic," he argued weakly. "My client is in danger. We need the guardianship now." "If your client is telling the truth, she has nothing to fear," Julian said. "The test will prove Mr. King is an addict and incompetent. Why would she object? Unless she knows exactly how those drugs got into his system." Judge Monroe looked at Tiffany. She looked at the video still frozen on the screen. Then she looked at me. I saw intelligence in her eyes. She smelled the rot. "Motion granted," she said, banging the gavel. "The hearing is adjourned for 48 hours pending the results of a toxicology hair panel on Mr. Otis King. The bailiff will escort Mr. King to the testing facility immediately." She pointed the gavel at Tiffany. "And Mrs. King, if I find out that you have misled this court, or that you have had any hand in drugging a vulnerable adult, you will not be leaving this building without handcuffs. Do I make myself clear?" "Crystal." "Your Honor," Tiffany whispered. "Court is adjourned." As the room cleared, Tiffany stood up. She looked at me. The mask of the victim was gone. In its place was pure, unadulterated panic. She knew what the hair test would show. She knew it would prove I wasn't an addict. It would prove I was a victim. And she knew that 48 hours was not enough time to run. I stood up and buttoned my jacket. I walked past her table. I leaned in close. "Promise you one won't pass out when you see the results," I whispered. Tiffany flinched as if I had slapped her. I walked out of the courtroom with Julian. "That was close," Julian said, wiping his brow. "It wasn't close," I said. "It was calculated. Now she is scared. Now she will make a mistake." "What kind of mistake?" Julian asked. "The kind that happens when a rat realizes the trap is shut and the only way out is through the one who set it." I looked at Darius, still sitting in the gallery, head in his hands. "She is going to turn on him," I said. "She is going to need a scapegoat. And my son is the perfect sacrifice. Let's go get my hair cut, Julian. I want to look my best for the funeral of their marriage." The gavel came down with a sound like a gunshot echoing through the wood-paneled courtroom. Judge Harriet Monroe looked over her spectacles at the assembly. She was a woman known for her impatience with family squabbles and her absolute adherence to the letter of the law. Case number 492 in the matter of the emergency guardianship of Otis King versus Tiffany King, petitioner, versus Otis King, respondent. I sat at the defendant's table. Julian was next to me, sorting through a stack of files with the calm demeanor of a man who knows he holds a royal flush. Across the aisle, Tiffany sat next to her lawyer, a slick man named Mr. Calloway, who wore a suit that cost more than my first car. Darius was there too, sitting in the gallery behind his wife, his head bowed like a man waiting for an execution. Tiffany was performing. She was wearing a modest navy dress, no jewelry, and minimal makeup. She dabbed at her dry eyes with a tissue every few seconds. She looked like the picture of a concerned, loving daughter-in-law forced into a heartbreaking decision. "Your Honor, Mr." Calloway began standing up and buttoning his jacket. "This is a tragic case, a case of a family trying desperately to protect a patriarch who has lost his way." My client, Mrs. King, has been the sole caregiver for Mr. King since his wife passed away. She has sacrificed her career, her savings, and her emotional well-being to care for a man who, unfortunately, has become a danger to himself and others. Objection, Julian said without looking up from his papers. Counsel is testifying. Sustained, Judge Monroe said. Get to the evidence, Mr. Calloway. Why do we need an emergency order? Because, Your Honor, Calloway said, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. Mr. King is violent. His dementia has progressed to a stage of aggressive paranoia. He has threatened my client. He has threatened his own son. He has wandered into traffic. And just 3 days ago, he threatened to burn down the family home. Lies. All of it. I kept my face impassive. I stared straight ahead. Do you have proof of these allegations? The judge asked. We do, Your Honor, Calloway said. We have sworn affidavits from the petitioner and her husband. We have medical records indicating a rapid cognitive decline. And we have video evidence. Video evidence. I felt a flicker of surprise. I looked at Julian. He raised an eyebrow but didn't speak. Calloway walked to the evidence monitor. He plugged in a flash drive. This video was taken 2 days ago, he said, inside the home of Darius and Tiffany King. It shows the respondent in a state of agitated delirium, destroying property and making threats. The screen flickered to life. It was me, or at least it looked like me. I was standing in the living room of Darius's house. I was holding a baseball bat. I was screaming words that were muffled but sounded angry. I swung the bat and smashed a lamp. Then I turned to the camera, my face twisted in rage, and yelled, I will burn it all down. You hear me? I will burn you all. The courtroom gasped. I heard whispers in the gallery. Look at him, he is crazy. I watched the screen. My heart hammered against my ribs. I had never done that. I had never held a bat in that house. I had never screamed those words. But the man on the screen wore my clothes. He had my face. He had my voice. It is a deep fake, Julian whispered to me, his voice low. Or a very good edit. They probably filmed you pacing or gesturing and digitally inserted the bat and the audio. It is sophisticated, expensive. Tiffany was sobbing now, her shoulders shaking. He scares me, she wailed softly. I love him, but I am terrified of him. Judge Monroe looked at me, her expression hardening. Mr. Weiss, do you have a response to this footage? Julian stood up slowly. He didn't look at the screen. He didn't look at Tiffany. He looked directly at the judge. Your Honor, we do not dispute that the man on the screen appears to be my client. We do not dispute that the behavior shown is erratic and violent. I looked at Julian shocked. Was he selling me out? However, Julian continued, his voice gaining strength, we dispute the cause. The petitioner claims this behavior is the result of dementia, Alzheimer's, a natural cognitive decline. Yes, Calloway interrupted. That is exactly what it is. Is it, Julian asked, turning to face Tiffany? Or is it the result of a deliberate, systematic poisoning designed to mimic the symptoms of dementia? The room went silent. Tiffany stopped sobbing mid-breath. Calloway froze. Poisoning, Judge Monroe asked, leaning forward. That is a serious accusation, counselor. Do you have proof? I do, Julian said. He picked up a document from his table. I have here a toxicology report from the Midtown Private Clinic dated 3 days ago. It shows that my client had lethal levels of lorazepam and synthetic sedatives in his bloodstream. Drugs that were never prescribed to him. Drugs that cause confusion, aggression, and memory loss. Objection, Calloway shouted. Calloway. That report is inadmissible. We have not seen it. It could be forged. And the video could be forged. Julian shot back. But biology doesn't lie. He walked to the bench and handed the report to the judge. She put on her glasses and read it. Her frown deepened. Mr. Calloway, do you have an explanation for why your client's father-in-law had enough sedatives in his system to tranquilize an elephant? I have no knowledge of this, Calloway stammered. Maybe he took them himself. Maybe he is an addict. That would explain the behavior. An addict. Julian laughed. A 72-year-old engineer with no history of substance abuse suddenly becomes a benzo junkie. Unlikely. But we can settle this right now, Your Honor. How, the judge asked. Hair, Julian said. He turned and pointed a finger at me. If my client has been taking these drugs voluntarily for months as an addict, the evidence will be in his hair follicles. But if this was a recent acute poisoning event, or a series of recent events coinciding with his visits to his son's house, The hair will tell a different story. It will show a timeline. It will show exactly when the toxins were introduced. He looked at Tiffany. She was pale. She was gripping the table with white knuckles. "We request an immediate court-ordered hair follicle test," Julian said, "to be conducted by a neutral third-party lab. Right now. Today." Calloway looked at Tiffany. He saw the fear in her eyes. He realized he was standing on a trap door. "Your Honor, this is a delay tactic," he argued weakly. "My client is in danger. We need the guardianship now." "If your client is telling the truth, she has nothing to fear," Julian said. "The test will prove Mr. King is an addict and incompetent. Why would she object? Unless she knows exactly how those drugs got into his system." Judge Monroe looked at Tiffany. She looked at the video still frozen on the screen. Then she looked at me. I saw intelligence in her eyes. She smelled the rot. "Motion granted," she said, banging the gavel. "The hearing is adjourned for 48 hours pending the results of a toxicology hair panel on Mr. Otis King. The bailiff will escort Mr. King to the testing facility immediately." She pointed the gavel at Tiffany. "And Mrs. King, if I find out that you have misled this court or that you have had any hand in drugging a vulnerable adult, you will not be leaving this building without handcuffs. Do I make myself clear?" "Crystal." "Your Honor," Tiffany whispered. "Court is adjourned." As the room cleared, Tiffany stood up. She looked at me. The mask of the victim was gone. In its place was pure, unadulterated panic. She knew what the hair test would show. She knew it would prove I wasn't an addict. It would prove I was a victim. And she knew that 48 hours was not enough time to run. I stood up and buttoned my jacket. I walked past her table. I leaned in close. "Promise you won't pass out when you see the results," I whispered. Tiffany flinched as if I had slapped her. I walked out of the courtroom with Julian. "That was close," Julian said, wiping his brow. "It wasn't close," I said. "It was calculated. Now she is scared. Now she will make a mistake." "What kind of mistake?" Julian asked. "The kind that happens when a rat realizes the trap is shut and the only way out is through the one who set it." I looked at Darius, still sitting in the gallery, head in his hands. "She is going to turn on him," I said. "She is going to need a scapegoat, and my son is the perfect sacrifice. Let's go get my hair cut, Julian. I want to look my best for the funeral of their marriage." The text message from Tiffany arrived at 9 in the morning on Thursday. It was formatted like a digital invitation to a gala. A celebration of life and legacy. Honoring Otis King. 7 p.m. The Sapphire Ballroom. It was a celebration, all right. It was a victory lap. My lawyer Julian had confirmed it an hour earlier. Tiffany had accessed the joint checking account. She had seen the pension deposit. She had managed to transfer $10,000 to a venue rental company before we could slap the freeze back on. She thought she had won. She thought she had bypassed the security on the patent trust and that the funds were just pending clearance. She was spending money she didn't have to celebrate a victory that didn't exist. She wasn't throwing me a party. She was throwing me a funeral while I was still breathing. The plan was obvious. Get me in a room full of witnesses. Announce my tragic decline. Announce my move to the Pines. Make it look like a benevolent act of love so that when she sold the house next week, nobody would ask questions. I picked up the phone and called her. "I will be there," I said. There was a pause. She hadn't expected me to answer. She hadn't expected me to be coherent. She thought the withdrawal symptoms from the benzos would have me shaking in a corner. "Oh, Dad," she said, her voice dripping with that sickening faux sweetness. "That is wonderful. We were so worried you wouldn't be up for it. It is just a small gathering. Close friends." I hung up. I spent the rest of the afternoon preparing. I didn't rest. I didn't pace. I groomed myself with the precision of a soldier preparing for a parade inspection. I shaved with a straight razor. I trimmed my mustache. I opened the garment bag I had brought from the house before they changed the locks. Inside was a tuxedo, custom-made, midnight blue wool with black satin lapels. I had worn it once to receive the Structural Engineer of the Year award in 2005. Viola had picked out the pocket square, a deep crimson silk. I dressed slowly. I buttoned the shirt. I tied the bow tie. I slid the cufflinks through the holes. They were gold-shaped like tiny eye beams. I looked in the mirror. The man staring back wasn't a confused geriatric patient. He wasn't a victim. He was a monument. He was a fortress that had weathered the storm and was now ready to return fire. Julian met me in the lobby of the Regency. He was wearing his best suit, too. He handed me a small, sleek flash drive. "It is all here," he said. "The video from the restaurant, the audio from the house, the bank records, the footage from the real estate office, and the arrest record of Dr. Evans from this morning." "Evans was arrested?" I asked, slipping the drive into my pocket. "Picked up at the airport," Julian said, smiling grimly, "trying to board a flight to Costa Rica. He sang like a bird, Otis. He gave us everything. Texts, emails, the forged medical history." "Good," I said. We got into the limousine Julian had hired. It was an extravagance, but appearances mattered tonight. We needed to look like power. The Sapphire Ballroom was a venue on the north side, the kind of place that charged $12 for a bottle of water. When we pulled up, the valet opened the door. I stepped out. The air was cool. I straightened my jacket and walked toward the entrance. Inside, the room was bathed in blue mood lighting. There was a jazz band playing in the corner. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne. I scanned the room. There were maybe 100 people there. I didn't recognize a single one. They were white. They were wealthy. They were Tiffany's crowd, the country club set, the junior league wives, the husbands who worked in finance and golfed on Tuesdays. They were the people she wanted to impress, the people she wanted to belong to. I was the prop, the black father-in-law who added a touch of exotic diversity to her narrative of charitable sainthood. I saw them whispering as I walked in. Heads turned, eyes widened. They were expecting a shuffling old man in a cardigan. Instead, they got a man who walked like he owned the building. Tiffany detached herself from a group of women near the bar. She was wearing a silver gown that sparkled under the lights. She looked like a trophy. She looked like a predator. "Otis," she said, gliding toward me. "You made it." She leaned in for a hug. I didn't raise my arms. She hugged me anyway, her body stiff and cold against mine. "You look surprisingly well," she whispered in my ear. Her voice was tight. "I feel fantastic, Tiffany," I said. She pulled back and looked at me. Her eyes darted to Julian standing behind me. "Who is this?" she asked. "An old friend," I said. "He drove me." She forced a smile. "Well, grab a drink. Find a seat. We are about to start the speeches." She walked away, signaling to a waiter. I scanned the room for Darius. I found him near the kitchen doors. He was holding a glass of scotch with both hands. He looked terrible. His skin was gray, his eyes sunken. He saw me and flinched. He looked like he wanted to run through the wall. He knew. He knew what he had done. He knew about the diary. He knew I had cut him off, and yet here he was still playing the part, still terrified of the woman in the silver dress. I walked over to him. He tried to back away, but he hit a pillar. "Dad," he croaked. "You look nice, son," I said, my voice devoid of warmth. "Dad, please." "Do not make a scene," Darius pleaded. Just let her do this. Let her have her party. Then we can go. Please." I looked at him. I looked at the fear in his eyes. "The scene has already been made, Darius," I said. "We are just waiting for the curtain to rise." A spoon clinked against a glass. The room quieted. The jazz band stopped playing. Tiffany was standing on a small stage at the front of the room. A spotlight hit her, turning her dress into a disco ball. She held a microphone with a delicate grip. "Good evening, everyone," she said, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. "Thank you all for coming. This is a very difficult but special night for our family." She paused, wiping a tear from her eye. The crowd murmured sympathetically. "We are here to honor my father-in-law, Otis King," she continued, gesturing vaguely in my direction. "A man who built bridges, a man who worked hard his whole life. But as many of you know, time is a thief." She looked down at her feet, then back up at the audience, brave and resolute. "Over the past 6 months, we have watched the man we love fade away," she said. "The confusion, the memory loss, the anger. It has been heartbreaking to witness. We tried to keep him at home. God knows Darius and I tried. We sacrificed everything to keep him safe. But," she let out a small sob, "but it has become too much. For his own safety, we have made the difficult decision to transition Otis to the Pines. It is a wonderful facility where he will get the 24-hour care he desperately needs." She looked at me. Her eyes were hard as flint. "This house, The house he built. It is just too much for him now, so we are letting it go, to pay for his care, to ensure his comfort. It is what Viola would have wanted. She dared to say her name. So please raise a glass, she said, lifting her champagne flute, to Otis King, to his legacy, and to his well-deserved rest. To Otis the crowd murmured, raising their glasses. Tiffany smiled, a smile of absolute victory. She thought she had done it. She had publicly declared me incompetent. She had socially sanctioned the sale of my house. She had won the narrative. Does anyone else want to say a few words, she asked, scanning the room, knowing no one knew me well enough to speak. I stepped forward. I do, I said. My voice didn't need a microphone. It carried from the diaphragm projected by 40 years of shouting orders over the roar of construction sites. The room went deadly silent. Tiffany froze. Her smile faltered. Otis, she said, a warning edge in her tone. You do not have to. You are tired. I am not tired, Tiffany, I said, walking toward the stage. I am just getting started. I walked through the crowd. People parted for me like water. I could feel their eyes on me. Confusion, curiosity. I walked up the 3 steps to the stage. I stood next to Tiffany. I was a foot taller than her. I loomed over her. She gripped the microphone. She didn't want to let go. Give it to me, I whispered, or I will take it. She let go. Her hand was shaking. She stepped back, her eyes darting to Darius, seeking help, but Darius was staring at the floor. I turned to the crowd. I looked at the sea of white faces, the expensive jewelry, the fake smiles. Thank you all for coming, I said into the mic. My daughter-in-law tells a compelling story, doesn't she? She speaks of sacrifice. She speaks of safety. She speaks of love. I paused. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the flash drive. But as an engineer, I have learned that you cannot judge a structure by its facade, I continued. You have to look at the foundation. You have to look at the stress points. And sometimes you have to look at the surveillance footage. I turned and pointed to the large projection screen behind the stage, which had been cycling through photos of me and Viola, photos Tiffany had stolen from my house. I walked over to the AV technician, a young kid sitting at a laptop by the side of the stage. He looked scared. Plug this in, son, I said, handing him the drive. Sir, I cannot. Tiffany's eyes went wide. She lunged forward. Do not do it, she screamed. Stop him, security. But it was too late. The kid, intimidated by the tone of my voice and the sheer presence of me, plugged the drive in. I turned back to the crowd. Tiffany says I am confused, I said. She says I am forgetting things. She says I am dangerous. I looked at Tiffany. She was pale, frozen in horror. But I remember everything I said. I remember the coffee. I remember the taste. I signaled the technician. Play it. I have a parting gift, I said into the microphone, my voice echoing off the high vaulted ceilings of the ballroom. A gift for the loving daughter-in-law who sacrificed everything. I stepped back from the podium. The technician behind me hit the space bar. The projection screen behind the stage, which had been displaying a soft focus loop of my life, flickering images of me and Viola from happier times, went black for a heartbeat. The room held its breath, expecting perhaps a video montage of my career or a sentimental tribute. Instead, the screen exploded into the stark, grainy, high-contrast black and white of a security camera feed. It was the footage from the Obsidian. It was massive, 10 feet high, every detail magnified. The timestamp in the corner marched forward relentlessly. There I was on the screen, standing up to leave the table. There was Tiffany watching me go, her eyes tracking me like a hawk. And then the moment of truth. The room was silent. 100 wealthy, well-connected people stared up at the giant screen. I saw a woman in the front row lower her champagne glass, her mouth falling open. On screen, Tiffany reached into her purse. The movement was sharp, furtive. She pulled out the vial. On the big screen, you could see the glint of the glass. You could see the clear liquid pouring into my coffee cup. A collective gasp ripped through the room. It sounded like the air being sucked out of an airlock. Look closely, I said, my voice cutting through the gasp. Watch the hand. Watch the pour. That is not sugar. That is a chemical restraint. On screen, Darius watched her do it. He watched her poison his father. And then, in high-definition shame, he picked up the sugar packets and poured them in to hide the taste. No, Tiffany screamed. Her voice was thin and hysterical. It is a lie. That is doctored. It is a deep fake. Turn it off. She lunged for the technician, but I caught her wrist. My grip was iron. I didn't squeeze. I just held her there, forcing her to stand center stage, forcing her to watch her own crime broadcast to the people she wanted so desperately to impress. "You are hurting me," she shrieked. "You hurt yourself the moment you uncorked that vial," I said. The video ended. The screen went black again. But I wasn't done. The visual evidence was the body blow. Now came the headshot. "And for those of you who think this was a mercy," I said, looking out at the stunned faces of her friends, her parents, her social circle. "For those of you who think she did this out of love, listen to this." I nodded at the kid. The speakers crackled. Then Tiffany's voice filled the room. It wasn't the sweet voice she used in public. It was the voice I had heard through the door, the voice Maya had recorded, the voice of a viper in her nest. It was the audio from the day she filed the guardianship papers. The audio from her phone call to Evans. "I am sick of this," her voice boomed, amplified by the concert-grade sound system. "I am sick of pretending to care about that old man. He smells like sawdust and old age." I saw Tiffany's mother in the third row put a hand over her mouth. Her father looked like he was having a stroke. And Darius, the recording continued. Tiffany's voice dripping with venomous contempt. "God, he is pathetic. He is just a weak black man who does whatever I tell him. I own him. He is terrified I will leave him, so he will let me do whatever I want to his daddy." Darius, standing by the kitchen doors, crumpled. He slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor, his expensive suit ruining the illusion of his dignity. The racism, the utter lack of respect, it hung in the air like a toxic cloud. "Once we get the guardianship," the recording continued, "we sell the house. We dump Otis at the cheapest state facility that will take him. I do not care if it has rats. I just want the money. The patent money. The house money. I deserve it. I earned it by dealing with them for 5 years." The audio cut off. The silence that followed was heavy. It was the silence of a structure that has lost its integrity and is hanging in the air for that split second before gravity takes over and brings it crashing down. I looked at the crowd. The shock had turned to revulsion. These were people who valued appearances above all else, and Tiffany had just exposed herself as something ugly, something rotten, something they could not associate with. I let go of her wrist. She stumbled back, rubbing her arm. She looked out at the audience, searching for an ally, searching for a friendly face. "Mom," she whimpered, reaching out a hand toward her parents' table. "Dad, it is not. It is taken out of context." Her father stood up. He was a man who cared about his reputation more than his blood. He looked at his daughter, and then he looked at me. He didn't say a word. He just turned his back on her and walked toward the exit, leaving his wife sobbing into her napkin. Tiffany spun around to face me. Her eyes were wild, feral. "You ruined everything," she hissed. "You old bastard. You ruined my life." I stepped closer to the microphone one last time. "I didn't ruin your life, Tiffany," I said, my voice calm, steady, and final. "I just turned on the lights. You are the one who scattered like a roach." Then the doors at the back of the ballroom burst open. It wasn't guests leaving. It was the flashing blue lights reflecting off the crystal chandeliers. Julian had timed it perfectly. 4 police officers marched into the room. They weren't smiling. They weren't there for security. They were there for business. Mrs. Tiffany King, the lead officer, announced, his voice booming. Tiffany froze. She looked at the police, then at the exits. For a second I thought she might run. She looked like a trapped animal calculating the distance to the window. But there was nowhere to go. The crowd had formed a wall, a semicircle of judgment blocking her path. The officers walked up the aisle. Their boots thudded on the plush carpet, the sound of justice approaching. "Mrs. King, you are under arrest," the officer said, stepping onto the stage. "For what?" she screamed, backing away until she hit the projection screen. "For trying to help an old man." "For attempted murder," the officer said, pulling out his handcuffs. "For conspiracy to commit fraud, for elder abuse, and for wire fraud." He grabbed her arms and spun her around. The click of the handcuffs ratcheting shut was the loudest sound in the room. "No," she screamed, struggling. "Darius, help me, Darius. Tell them." I looked at Darius. He was still sitting on the floor by the kitchen doors. He looked up. His eyes met mine across the room. He looked at his wife, the woman who had called him weak, the woman who had poisoned his father, the woman who was now being dragged off the stage in her silver gown. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just watched. The officers hauled her down the steps. She was kicking and screaming, cursing me, cursing Darius, cursing the world. As they dragged her past me, I leaned down. "I told you," I whispered. The foundation failed. They dragged her out through the center aisle, past the people she had tried so hard to impress, past the parents who had turned their backs, past the husband she had broken. When the doors closed behind her, the room remained silent. I looked at the crowd. "Please enjoy the champagne," I said. "I paid for it." I walked down the stairs. Julian was waiting for me at the bottom. He clapped a hand on my shoulder. "That was effective," he said. "It is not over," I said. I walked over to Darius. The crowd parted for me. They looked at me with fear now. Not pity. Fear. That was good. Respect is better, but fear will do in a pinch. "Darius," I said, looking down at him. He looked up. He looked like a child. A broken child. "Dad," he whispered. I took the envelope from my inside pocket. The cashier's check for the remainder of the indemnity fund. The money I had pulled from the bank. I dropped it on the floor next to him. "That is for a lawyer," I said. "Not for her. For you. You are going to need one because I am not pressing charges against you today, but I am done saving you. Dad, please." "Stand up," I said sharply. "Stand up, Darius. You are a king. Stop acting like a servant in your own life." He stood up shakily. He looked at the check, then at me. "Go," I said. "Get out of here. Figure out who you are when you are not being told what to do." Darius nodded, tears streaming down his face. He picked up the check and walked out the back door into the night. I stood alone in the center of the ballroom. I was tired. My bones ached. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a hollow space in my chest where my family used to be. But the house was clean. The rot was gone. Maya appeared at my elbow. She was holding a glass of water. "Are you okay, Mr. King?" she asked. I took the water. I drank it in one long gulp. "I am standing, Maya," I said. "I am still standing." The silence in the ballroom was shattered not by a gavel but by a scream that sounded less like a human woman and more like a steam pipe bursting under extreme pressure. Tiffany King did not go quietly. The reality of the handcuffs clicking around her wrists was the final stress fracture in her facade, and the entire structure of her personality collapsed in an instant. "You old devil!" she shrieked, her face twisting into a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. She lunged forward. It was a feral movement. She wasn't trying to escape the officers, she was trying to get to me. Her manicured claws were aimed directly at my face. She wanted to hurt me. She wanted to erase the man who had just erased her future. The officer holding her left arm stumbled slightly, surprised by the sudden violence of a woman in a silver evening gown. For a split second there was a gap. She broke free of one grip and threw herself toward the edge of the stage where I stood. I didn't flinch. I didn't step back. I had faced down steel beams swinging in high winds. I wasn't afraid of a desperate grifter in heels, but I didn't have to defend myself. Before Tiffany could bridge the gap, a figure blurred into her path. It was Maya. Maya stepped between us with the fluidity of a dancer and the solidity of a riot shield. She caught Tiffany by the shoulders, her grip firm and professional. Maya wasn't just a waitress. She wasn't just a student. In that moment, she was the wall I had built around myself. "Step back," Maya commanded, her voice projecting with the authority that stunned the room. "Do not touch him." Tiffany struggled against her spitting words that would have made a sailor blush. "Get out of my way, you little servant. Who do you think you are?" "I am Mr. King's legal assistant," Maya said, shoving Tiffany back toward the waiting police officers. "And I am a witness to your assault. Add that to the list, officers." The police swarmed in then. The lead officer, a man with a face like carved granite, grabbed Tiffany's arms and pinned them behind her back. He wasn't gentle this time. He leaned her over the podium, forcing her to look out at the crowd she had tried so hard to cultivate. "Tiffany King, you are under arrest," he boomed, and this time he read the charges for the whole room to hear. For the attempted murder of Otis King via chemical poisoning, for the gross abuse of an elderly person, for wire fraud involving the attempted theft of intellectual property, and for conspiracy to commit medical fraud. Each charge hit the audience like a physical blow. I watched the faces of Tiffany's friends, the women she played tennis with, the men Darius tried to impress on the golf course. They weren't looking at her with sympathy. They were looking at her with the cold, detached curiosity one reserves for roadkill. They were already rewriting their memories, already distancing themselves. I could see them mentally deleting her number from their phones. No, Tiffany screamed, thrashing against the restraints. "It is a lie. He is senile. He made it up. Darius, tell them. Tell them your father is crazy." The officer jerked her upright. You have the right to remain silent, ma'am. I suggest you start using it. But she didn't stop. She looked at Darius. He was still standing by the wall, a ghost in a suit, his eyes wide and vacant. Darius, she wailed, her voice cracking. Do something. You are his son. He will listen to you. Fix this. Darius took a step forward. For a second, just a fraction of a heartbeat, I thought he might try. I thought he might try to intervene, to argue, to defend the woman who had led him to the edge of the cliff. Then the lead officer turned his gaze to my son. Mr. Darius King, he said, we have a warrant for your questioning regarding these charges. We suggest you do not leave town. Darius froze. The fear of prison finally outweighed his fear of his wife. He stopped moving. He looked at Tiffany, and then he looked at the floor. He abandoned her just as she would have abandoned him if the roles were reversed. Tiffany saw it. She saw the betrayal. She let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. You coward, she spat at him. You useless, spineless coward. I should have left you years ago. The officers began to drag her toward the exit. It was a long walk. The center aisle of the Sapphire Ballroom was 50 feet long, and every inch of it was lined with the people whose validation she craved like oxygen. They pulled her past the table where her parents sat. Her mother had her face buried in her hands, weeping into a linen napkin. Her father was staring straight ahead, refusing to make eye contact with the daughter being hauled away in cuffs. Daddy Tiffany pleaded as she passed him. Daddy, call the lawyer. Help me. Her father picked up his glass of champagne and took a sip. He didn't look at her. He cut her off just as surely as a surgeon cuts out a tumor. The murmurs of the crowd grew louder as she passed. Did you hear the recording? One woman whispered loud enough for Tiffany to hear. She called us idiots for donating. Disgusting, a man said. Absolutely trashy. I knew there was something off about her, another lied. She tried to sell me that house last week. Tiffany heard them. I saw her shoulders slump. The fight drained out of her not because of the law, but because of the social death she was experiencing in real time. She realized then that even if she beat the charges, which she wouldn't, her life in this town was over. She was a pariah. She was the woman who poisoned a helpless old man for money. The doors swung shut behind her, cutting off her wails. The room was left in a stunned silence. The air felt lighter, cleaner, as if a ventilation system had just sucked out a cloud of toxic gas. All eyes turned back to the stage, to me. I adjusted my cufflinks. I took a sip of water from the glass on the podium. I wasn't done. I looked down at Darius. He was standing alone near the exit, isolated by a 10-foot radius of empty space that the crowd had instinctively created around him. He looked like a man who had survived a plane crash only to find himself in a desert. Officers, I said into the microphone, my voice calm and commanding. You do not need to arrest my son tonight. Darius looked up, hope flickering in his eyes like a dying candle. He thought I was saving him. He thought Daddy was coming to the rescue one last time. He is not a flight risk, I continued. He has nowhere to go. He has no resources, and he has no one left to run to. I stepped off the stage and walked toward him. The crowd parted again. I stopped 5 feet from him. Darius, I said loud enough for the room to hear, you stood by while she poured poison into my cup. You stood by while she planned to lock me in a cage. You stood by because you thought there was a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Darius trembled. Dad, I didn't want... You wanted the money, I cut him off. You wanted the easy life. You wanted the inheritance without the work. You wanted the house without the mortgage. I reached into my jacket pocket. I pulled out a document. It wasn't a check. It was a letter from the bank, formally notarized by Julian that afternoon. I held it up. You were waiting for the King Patent Trust, I said. You knew about the $12 million. Tiffany found the papers. You thought once I was gone it would all be yours. A gasp went through the room. $12 million. The number hung in the air, shifting the crowd's perception of me once again. I wasn't just a victim. I was a tycoon. Well, I have news for you, son, I said. This afternoon at 2 p.m. I exercised my right as the sole grantor of that trust. I liquidated it. Darius's knees buckled. He grabbed the back of a chair to stay upright. Liquidated, he whispered. Every cent, I said. The accounts are empty, Darius. The house is in a blind trust that you cannot touch. The insurance policies have been canceled. The pension is locked. I took a step closer. my voice dropping to a register of absolute finality. "I have donated the entire balance of the patent trust to the National Society of Black Engineers Scholarship Fund in the name of your mother, Viola King." "No." Darius moaned. "No, Dad. You cannot." "It is done," I said. "The money is gone, and so is your safety net." I ripped the document in half and let the pieces fall to the floor. "You will not receive a dime, Darius. Not now. Not when I die. Not ever. You bet against your father and you lost. You are 38 years old. It is time you learned how to survive on your own merit, because my legacy will not be used to fund the lifestyle of a coward." Darius looked at the torn paper on the floor. He looked at the empty space where his future used to be. He looked destroyed. But I felt no guilt. I felt only the cold clarity of a structural engineer who has removed a load-bearing wall that was too weak to support the roof. It had to come down so something better could be built in its place. I turned to the crowd. "This party is over," I said. "Go home, look at your families, and ask yourselves if the foundation is strong enough to hold you when the storm comes." I walked toward the exit. Julian fell into step beside me. Maya was waiting by the door holding my coat. As I walked out into the cool night air, I heard Darius sobbing behind me. It was a lonely sound, a sound of total structural collapse, but I didn't look back. I had a taxi to catch, and for the first time in 6 months I had a future that belonged only to me. The morning after the arrests, I went back to Highland Avenue. I didn't take a limousine this time. I took a taxi. I asked the driver to wait at the curb while I walked up the driveway of the house I had built with my own hands 40 years ago. The first thing I did was walk over to the white wooden post in the center of the lawn, the one holding the Century Elite Realty sign. I didn't wait for a crew. I gripped the post with both hands, feeling the rough wood against my palms. I engaged my legs and my back using the leverage I had learned from decades of lifting steel beams. I heaved. The post groaned and popped out of the earth, leaving a jagged hole in the zoysia grass. I threw the sign into the gutter. It landed face down in a puddle of muddy water. Pending sale. Canceled. I unlocked the front door. The house was silent. It was empty of furniture, but it was full of ghosts. It smelled of lemon pledge and that cloying, expensive perfume Tiffany wore, the scent of a predator marking its territory. I didn't sleep there that night. I couldn't. The air felt contaminated. Instead, I hired a crew. Not a maid service, but an industrial remediation team usually reserved for fire damage or crime scenes. I gave them specific instructions. Strip the carpets, I told the foreman. Sand the floors down to the raw oak and refinish them. Repaint every wall. Viola's color. Cream, not this cold hospital gray Tiffany chose. I want the vents scrubbed. I want the locks changed again. I want every molecule of the last 6 months erased. I spent the next 2 weeks living out of the Regency, supervising the work like it was a construction site. I watched as they peeled away the layers of betrayal. I watched as the house began to breathe again. But while I was reclaiming the brick and mortar, I was losing the flesh and blood. Julian kept me updated on Darius. It was a grim report. My son had not used the cashier's check to hire a defense attorney or to pay off his debts. He had not used it to find a modest apartment or to get therapy. He had cashed it at a check cashing place, taking a huge hit on the fees, and he had vanished into the bottle. Julian found him living in a weekly rate motel on the edge of the industrial district, the kind of place where the doors do not lock properly and the sirens never stop. He had lost his job. He had lost his car, repossessed by the dealer. He had lost his wife to a jail cell. And he had lost his father. One rainy Tuesday night, about 3 weeks after the party, there was a pounding on my front door. It was late past midnight. The remediation crew was gone. The house was empty but clean, smelling of fresh paint and wood polish. I knew who it was before I opened the door. I could hear the heavy, stumbling footsteps on the porch. I turned on the porch light, but I didn't unlock the deadbolt. I looked through the peephole. Darius was standing there. He was soaking wet, shivering in a thin jacket that was stained with grease and alcohol. His face was gaunt, unshaven. He looked like a ghost of the man who had driven me to the woods. "Dad," he slurred, pounding his fist weakly against the wood. "Dad, I know you are in there. Let me in. It is cold." I stood on the other side of the door, my hand hovering over the lock. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to open it. It is a biological imperative. A father protects his child. A father shelters his son from the storm. For 38 years I had opened every door for him. I had smoothed every road. But I remembered the taste of the coffee. I remembered the sound of him whispering into his watch, trading my life for his comfort. I realized then that opening the door wouldn't save him. It would kill him. If I let him in now, if I gave him a warm bed and a hot meal and a fresh check, he would never learn. He would stay a child forever, a parasite waiting for the next host. He needed to hit the concrete. He needed to feel the impact. That is the only way you learn how to stand back up. Darius said through the door, my voice loud enough to be heard over the rain but steady as a stone. Dad, he sobbed, pressing his forehead against the glass. Please, I have nowhere to go. They took everything. They didn't take anything, Darius, I said. You gave it away. You traded it for a lie. I am sorry, he wailed. I am sorry. Just let me in. I will be good. I promise. You cannot come in, son, I said. This house is a fortress now, and you are not structural. You are a crack in the foundation. Dad, please. Go to the shelter on 4th Street, I said. They have beds. They have counselors. They have a program. If you get sober, if you get a job, if you show me 6 months of pay stubs from honest work, then you can knock on this door again, but not tonight. Dad, he screamed, kicking the door. You cannot do this. I am your son. I am doing this because you are my son, I whispered to the empty hallway. I walked away. I went up the stairs into my bedroom and I closed the door. I listened to him scream and cry for 20 minutes until the neighbors called the police. I watched from the window as the cruiser pulled up. They didn't arrest him. They just gave him a ride, probably to the shelter I mentioned. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the dark feeling the weight of the silence. It was a heavy load, but it was a load I could bear because I knew it was necessary. I had saved his life by ruining it. The next morning I went to see Julian. I had one more piece of business to finish. The $12 million from the patent trust was sitting in a holding account. It was too much money for one old man. It was dangerous money. Money that attracted sharks like Tiffany and made weak men like Darius crumble. I want to set up a foundation, I told Julian. He nodded, clicking his pen. Name. The Viola King Memorial Scholarship, he wrote. Criteria, Julian asked. I looked out the window at the Atlanta skyline. I saw the bridges I had helped build. I saw the skyscrapers standing tall against the clouds. Full ride, I said. Tuition books, housing. For students from the zip codes, nobody cares about. For the kids who are good at math but do not have the money for a calculator. For the black boys and girls who want to be engineers but get told they should aim lower. I want to find the builders, Julian. I want to find the ones who know what it means to work with their hands, the ones who understand that you cannot cheat gravity. Julian smiled. That is a hell of a legacy, Otis. It is not a legacy, I said. It is an investment. I am building a new family, Julian, one chosen by merit, not blood. I signed the papers. I watched the money leave my account. I felt lighter. The target on my back was gone. The bait was gone. 6 months passed. The seasons changed. The azaleas in the front yard bloomed explosive pink and white just like Viola loved. I spent my days consulting on small projects for the city, mostly pro bono. I spent my evenings reading on the porch. I was alone, but I wasn't lonely. There is a difference. Loneliness is a void. Solitude is a structure you build around yourself for peace. One Sunday morning, a car pulled into the driveway. It wasn't a luxury sedan. It was a beat-up Honda Civic. Maya got out. She was wearing scrubs. She looked tired, but her eyes were bright. She was finishing her first semester of nursing school tuition paid in full by an anonymous donor, though she knew exactly who it was. She walked up the porch steps carrying 2 cardboard cups from a coffee shop down the street. "Good morning, Mr. King," she said, smiling. "Good morning, Maya," I said, closing my book. She sat down in the rocking chair next to me. She handed me one of the cups. "It is black," she said, "no sugar." And I watched them pour it. I took the cup. The heat warmed my hands. "I trust you," I said. We sat there for a long time watching the cars drive by on Highland Avenue. We didn't need to talk. We shared the quiet understanding of 2 people who had looked into the abyss of human greed and decided not to jump. "You know," Maya said, looking at the freshly painted house, "it looks good. Strong." "It is," I said, taking a sip of the coffee. It was bitter and hot and clean. It tasted like freedom. "Have you heard from him?" she asked gently. I nodded. "He sent me a letter last week, from a rehab center in Alabama. He is 30 days sober. He is working in the kitchen. That is good, she said. It is a start, I said. He is mixing his own concrete now. We will see if it sets. I looked at Maya. She was young, smart, and brave. She wasn't my blood, but she was my people. Thank you, I said. For the coffee, she asked. For locking the door, I said. For making me look at the screen. For saving me from the wreckage. She smiled and took a sip of her drink. We builders have to stick together, Mr. King. I leaned back in my chair. The house was silent behind me. The sun was warm on my face. My wife was gone, my son was distant, and my money was given away. But I was here. I was whole. And for the first time in a long time, I was building something new. I took another sip of coffee. It was the best cup I had ever tasted. The gavel fell on Tiffany's life with a finality that felt like a steel beam dropping into place. 15 years. That was the sentence. The judge, a stern woman who had seen enough elder abuse cases to know a predator when she saw one, did not buy the tears or the stories of a desperate wife trying to save her family. She saw the toxicology reports. She heard the recordings. She saw the malice. Tiffany screamed when they led her away. She didn't scream for mercy. She screamed at Darius. She blamed him for being weak. She blamed me for being alive. She blamed the world for not giving her what she believed she was owed. I watched her go without a flicker of emotion. She was just debris now cleared away to make room for new construction. Darius did not go to prison. The district attorney decided that his cooperation and his obvious manipulation by his wife were mitigating factors. But he did not go free either. He is in a prison of his own making. I saw him last week. I didn't speak to him. I just parked my car across the street from a construction site in downtown Atlanta. He was there wearing a yellow vest and a hard hat, carrying sheets of drywall up a flight of stairs. He looked thinner. He looked tired. He looked older than his 38 years. But for the first time in his life, he looked honest. He is working for a foreman I used to know. Minimum wage, long hours, no shortcuts. He lives in a studio apartment the size of my walk-in closet. He pays his own rent. He buys his own food. He is learning the lesson I should have taught him 20 years ago. That money has weight, and you have to have the muscle to carry it. He writes me letters once a month. He tells me about his sobriety. He tells me about the blisters on his hands. He does not ask for money. He does not ask to come home. He just asks me to read them, and I do. I keep them in a box in the study. I do not answer them yet. Concrete takes 28 days to reach full strength. A man takes longer. When he is cured, when he can stand on his own without cracking, maybe then I will open the door. But not today. I am not alone in the house on Highland Avenue. The silence that used to haunt me after Viola died has been replaced by the sound of the future. The Viola King Memorial Scholarship is in full swing. Every Tuesday and Thursday, my dining room table is covered in blueprints and calculus textbooks. I have 5 students this semester, 3 boys and 2 girls from neighborhoods where the schools do not have heat in the winter. They call me Mr. Otis. They drink my coffee. They ask me about load-bearing walls and tensile strength. They have a hunger in their eyes that I recognize. It is the same hunger I had in 1970, the hunger to build something that lasts. Maya is the captain of this little ship. She graduated nursing school last month with honors. She stops by 3 times a week not to check my blood pressure but to check on my heart. She brings groceries. She helps the students with their biology homework. She sits on the porch with me, and we watch the sun set. She is the daughter I never had and the friend I desperately needed. She proved that loyalty is an action, not a bloodline. Sometimes late at night when the students are gone and the house settles, I walk to the mantel. I pick up the blue ceramic vase. I run my thumb over the cool glaze. I look at the photo of Viola next to it. She is smiling that smile that could light up a rainy Tuesday. I talk to her. I tell her about the scholarship. I tell her about Darius and his hard hat. I tell her about the azaleas blooming in the yard. We did it, V, I whisper to the empty room. The storm came. The wind blew, the wolves scratched at the door, but the house is still standing. I protected our home, I protected our name, and I protected our dignity. I am 73 years old now. My joints ache when it rains. My eyes aren't what they used to be, but my spine is straight. I sleep soundly at night. I do not fear the dark because I know what is in it and I know I can handle it. I have reclaimed my life. I have rebuilt my world. And I did it without compromising a single inch of my integrity. True power isn't loud. It doesn't need to scream or manipulate or poison to be felt. It sits quietly in the corner, observing, calculating, and waiting for the right moment to correct the imbalance. My family mistook my silence for weakness and my kindness for stupidity. They learned too late that the foundation of a skyscraper isn't seen, but it is the only thing that matters when the storm comes. Never underestimate the ones who built the ground you walk on, for they can just as easily pull it out from under your feet. Did you enjoy seeing justice finally served? If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps us share these important lessons with the world. I want to know, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have forgiven them or walked away? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to tell me which city you are watching from. If you want to support the channel further, consider sending a super thanks. Check out the video on the screen for another powerful story of betrayal and redemption. See you in the next one with love and respect.